here is you're going to see ABC's version of the debate. I'm waiting on my homegirl now, P.O.C, to pull up so we could be in conversation. For those of you who have listened to us on WURD here in Philly, you know that we vibe well off of one another. You know, we have some healthy pushback of one another, and I know it's going to come when we talk about these two polarizing figures, uh Kamala Harris and 45. You know I don't say his name. Peace, Rich. Appreciate you for tuning in on the IG, everybody. For those of you who are on IG, again, go ahead and go to tiny URL backslash Pac and Doc if you want to join the broadcast. And this is for those of you as well who would like to come on screen and have this conversation. It's tinyurl.com / Pac and Doc guest. So let me bring the homegirl P.O.C in.
Check, mic check, mic check. What it do, Phil? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm not sure why it's not coming through my speaker right now.
Can you
But
hear me now?
otherwise, how you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm trying to make sure my sound good. I'm set up remotely myself, so I'm trying to make sure everything clear and crystal.
Word, word.
Everything good?
I'm checking right now just to make sure my audio is set. All right, the audio is set. Not sure why the speakers. Oh, there we go. All right, so yeah, we set this real time. Usually we had this already configured and ready to go, but we're doing this in real time.
We really are doing this in real time. I love
Word.
a
So let
live
me,
show, man. This is what I get into, so I'm interested.
yo, listen, and this is what we do, right?
Yeah,
Like for
that part.
those, I had some folk who are like, yo, y'all gonna be doing something. It's just like, yeah, we definitely are. So, and they were excited about it. And so if they excited, I'm excited. But let
Girl.
me make sure I get you on the screen. All right, there we go. So we equals, right? So it's not one that's bigger than the other. So with this live debate, and I have it streaming on this end, they really ain't get started yet. We're just looking at a lot of conversation
Hmm.
from the talking heads that be at these desks, right? These journalists, the same thing we are, but we a little bit different,
I actually got
right?
my
Where
Black Press T-shirt on. What T-shirt you rocking today? I know you always got a good T-shirt on for the
oh,
folks. What you got
listen,
on?
man, this who they say Kamala is supposed who is
Oh, you got that Shirley
can't
Chisholm on.
no, that's Fannie Lou
Oh,
Hamer.
that's
Nobody's
Fannie Lou.
free.
I didn't even peep
Uh,
that. I
uh,
automatically thought that was Shirley Chisholm because the comparison right there, that first black woman for president. My
exactly,
bad, my bad. Fannie
exactly, and
Lou is
they
actually one of the pioneers. That's like my sister soldier, like my spirit animal for sure. I ain't gonna hold you.
were, and they say she's standing on the shoulders of Fannie Lou Hamer, which I find to
They
be
said
utterly
Kamala is standing on the shoulders of Fannie Lou Hamer.
because Fannie Lou, she when she confronted the Democratic Party about the lack of representation,
Oh, okay, okay,
uh,
okay, okay, okay.
and what have you, and so
She went in
now
that
they're
day and made
saying,
some noise.
yeah, and so what they're saying is she embodies what Fannie Lou was talking about, and I'm here to say she does
Mm.
not embody what Fannie Lou is talking
Oh,
about.
you're saying she does not.
Not at all, not at
Because
all.
I thought
Fannie,
that was a stretch when you said it a little bit. I was like, okay, cool, okay.
but that's what happens during this time. I was watching Cory Booker earlier, and listen,
Hmm.
he's a thespian of all thespian. His acting game, I see why he allegedly dated Rosario Dawson. Again, I'm gonna put the allegedly out there because I'm not sure of his get down, as folks say, but he said he dated Rosario Dawson, so that's what I'm gonna say too. But listen, he was act. Listen, when I think of her as the first black woman president, it just makes my heart smile, and my ancestors, they all stand up and they applaud. Now, he didn't
Shout out to
necessarily
Cory
say that,
Booker.
but I'm just like, Corey, come on, dog. You don't gotta
Hmm.
do this.
I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing currently right now, and I think that's what the conversations are, especially between that next generation, Generation Z, and the conversation between millennials is. Does she automatically get that black vote because she's black? You know, Cory Booker riding because he want to see his sister win. I understand that, and a lot of folks are on that same bandwagon as far as like we just won't give it to her because she's black. At this point, we know we don't want 45 back in the office. And you're hilarious for that too. That flyer. You I don't know if nobody else peeped that. I peeped it for
The
sure. But
flyer.
I didn't know if nobody else peeped that. It put Kamala Harris in 45. I was like, oh, Phil's always up to
But
something, man.
oh,
That
see,
man must
you
be
know
up
what
to
I thought you
something.
was talking about? I thought you was talking about the picture because the picture of the flyer has him with the band-aid on his ear.
Oh, I didn't even
I
peep
don't,
that. I didn't even peep that one.
and, and I did that because a lot of folk are like, Phil, why are you so critical of the Democratic Party? Why are you so critical of Kamala Harris? Because they're supposed to be the party of moral righteousness,
Yeah.
right? They're supposed to be the moral leaders of society, allegedly, right?
Mhm.
I don't take 45 serious. And so I don't spend my energy on trying to speak disparagingly about people that I don't take serious. I just don't give them my energy. That goes to that whole, if you, what is it? If you're arguing with a fool, they won't know who's who.
That's
And
real.
that's how I look at it. And that's how I
Especially if
look
you
at
know
it.
that other one, you know better, you do better. So you don't got time to be going in the merry-go-round if you know you ain't trying to go around and around. So it makes a lot of sense, honestly. But I'm ready. I'm interested and see how much this debate spends the American people today. Speaking about that merry-go-round, I feel like a lot of people are ready to hop off of the merry-go-round. They want actual results and they want things actually done this time around for the next 4 years. And it's crazy to really witness this in our time, Phil. You know, this is my third election, I would say, my fourth election, I would say, as a registered voter. My first was the '08 with Obama. You know, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
my first was 2012 with Obama. Correction, I'm sorry. My first time was 2012 with Obama. So, um, to witness these things at a very young age, but also as still a young voter, you know what I mean? Because being around for four elections is not a long period of time, and two of those elections was Barack Obama. So when it comes down to being in a space of saying both candidates are typically running for, or technically we can say running for another 4 years, is very different for me, honestly. This is my first time, and this is everyone's first time, honestly, where we have a president who gets the opportunity to rerun for president.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of first time. It's the first time for a lot of folks to see one, a black woman vote, because not a lot of people would, I mean, run for president. Not a lot of people was around for Shirley Chisholm, and then also to actually be able to say their vice president is becoming the next president of the United States. That's not an average conversation either.
Yeah, and salute again to the people who are watching on Instagram. Head on over to the link that's pinned in the Instagram,
Okay.
tinyurl.com/Pock and Doc. Or if you want to be a guest on, we want you on here. We don't want to just be the only ones talking. It's
Yeah.
Pock and Doc guest.
I sent it to some folks myself for sure.
Word.
So what I'm gonna do,
So
Phil, is I'm gonna try to join you on Instagram, but I'm gonna turn it all the way down so it does so you don't hear it. You think that'll work? So we can blend
that
the audiences that way, or you think it's still gonna
yeah,
mesh with the sound?
I think it's still going to be a little feedback because I was actually hearing some a little bit.
Well,
So
that's because I turned it on, but I didn't turn it down. I just turned it all the way down. So can we
I
take
mean, we
it?
could listen. We could
Let's
try
try.
it.
Yeah, let's try. Let's see what
We could
happens.
try it.
And
You
again,
know what?
what?
Now, you know what? I was going to say yeah, but let's drive people to the actual spot.
Okay.
You know what I
All right.
mean?
Cool. Cool. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, put yours
I
on for
sent
sure.
I sent a lot. I sent it out a lot as far as text messages, the link, letting people know, put it on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. We should have some people joining in. I'm not sure how it is on your end when they're backstage to let them in and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
can see all the people who pull up backstage. So
all
we'll
right,
definitely
cool,
get you
perfect,
on. If you
perfect.
want to come on, if you have thoughts, we're about 19 minutes away from the 2024 presidential debate. They treating this like it's WrestleMania, like it's The Rock versus Stone Cold,
And you're
like
gonna put it
this.
up on the screen for the folks too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure,
Okay,
for
all right,
sure.
cool, cool, cool.
So if you didn't get an opportunity to join the watch party, I'm just waiting for it to start. You can watch it with us. You can
Yes.
watch all the facial expressions that I make. These MFs, you could see P.O.C and her loveliness, and we could watch it all together as a family. But yeah, what do you think about how they're billing this? Right, they're billing this is like Rocky versus Drago. You know
I
what I
mean,
mean? Like
in the hip hop
it's a
culture, they're
death
calling
fight.
it a versa. You feel me? They made it feel like it's the
Oh, they
versa
said it's a
again.
yeah. Shout out to
Dipset
Timbaland and
versus the
Swiss
locks
Beat.
all over again. You feel me?
Yeah, shout
Um,
out to them for messing up something that the culture had and no longer has. Again, these capitalists, boy, these they love it. They
for
love
sure.
it.
To be honest, you know, as someone who's really into politics, I think for me is really exciting. For a lot of people who I talk to on a daily basis, they're overwhelmed. They're pretty much drowned by all of this conversation back and forth. You got to remember, Kamala Harris jumped into this race to get this ticket late into the game. So the conversation was Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, all at the top of the year. So now, what, in the past 2 months, 60 days, 30, 90 days, we've been screaming Kamala Harris' name to the Raptors, and just pushing a new agenda, pushing a new voice, pushing new policies, and understanding what she will be able to do as a candidate, I think has really totally overwhelmed a lot of voters. And I think that
Mm.
that's why we're getting so much pushback about the black vote and this, that, and the third, the feminist vote, all of these crazy things that we're breaking voters down into. And it's crazy because it was once a two-party system, you know what I mean? And now I feel like gender, race, religion, all of this, it really takes a big part in the conversation now when we talk about politics. So when you say what do I think about it, I'm excited. You know what I mean? I'm excited because I want to be a part of this democratic conversation, and then also I want to see how we unfold as a nation. But at the same time, as a voter, it's a lot. You know what I mean? It really is a lot, and it's a lot of pressure on the everyday average person who just wants to get up, go to work, pay their taxes, and make sure they got something in their 401k.
Word, word. So we're gonna bring in Agbana. Peace, Agbana. How you feeling?
Hey, all right, how you doing?
What's up? How
I'm
are you?
good.
What's
What's
good? Philly
popping?
Green Man in the building, always
Oh
representing.
man, good brother. How you feeling, man?
Hey, I'm outstanding. You
Word.
know, the question that I ask everybody in regards to the election is, what's each candidate's political philosophy? What is Kamala Harris's political philosophy? What is Donald Trump's political philosophy? And I don't think people can really make a decision, educated decision, and a wise decision until they know what that is. And
Mm.
most people that I ask, they can't tell me what Kamala Harris's political philosophy is,
I
but
think
they can
tonight,
certainly.
I feel like tonight she has no choice but to show up as far as telling people who she is as a whole person, showing people her personality, actually answering questions as far as her policies. Like I agree with you. People are questioning a lot about her. And it's crazy because she's been the vice president for 4 years, and I understand vice presidents don't have as much leverage as the president. But for people to still be like, "Who is she?" I definitely agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows. Look, let's just be honest, right? Uh, I often wondered how Jim Jones got the people to drink the Kool-Aid, to kill themselves.
Mm.
And it was just strange. How could all those people not be thinking? And I'm saying the same thing as it relates to this election. One week, Joe Biden is fine. He's gonna do well. He's competent. And then the next week, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, and
Yeah.
it didn't miss a beat.
Hmm.
So I don't think too many people are really thinking in regards to who the Democratic candidate is. They're worried about beating Donald Trump, which I don't think is a good way to look at who should be the president.
I think that's a great point, honestly, Phil. I know you have something to say, but I want to piggyback on what he just said.
Yeah, yeah. So well, you go piggyback because I want to push back a little bit to that idea of just voting to beat Donald Trump. So you go ahead and drop your thoughts right quick,
That's
POC.
exactly where I was going to go with it too.
Oh,
That
you
last
was gonna go
comment he
there too? Word.
made.
And so I'll say this, right? Because I'm somebody who's extremely critical of the Democratic Party. I understand why folk are saying, I don't want this man in office. Everything that he represents, right? And when we talk about just the wanton way he's going about um the wanton way in which he's going about governing, number one, because he was president for 4 years, so we have a good understanding of how he will show up. We recognize that the people he put into places like the Supreme Court, like the judges that he selected. So I recognize why people would say, listen, man, I get it. Kamala isn't necessarily the best candidate. We would love to have somebody who's not as corporate, somebody who's not a prosecutor, somebody who's more progressive. But the fact is, this person could mean destruction in a whole different way, in a faster way, as opposed to this titrated destruction that comes from voting Democratic. So I get it. So if I'm a woman and I look at actively at what he's done, I can't say no, I don't understand it. I would say Kamala, yeah, in this area, she might has a better perspective because she is a woman in this regard. But ultimately, I can't necessarily say it's outright wrong for somebody to want to vote for her over 45 because of things like that.
And Phil,
So
when you say that breakdown, honestly, when you say that breakdown, it actually puts more oil on the fire. You know what I mean? When we hear these conversations from the next generation of voters talking about voting for the lesser two evils, right? Because when you make that statement, Phil, talking as if, yeah, I mean, we don't have all the pros and cons to the Democratic Party, but we know we don't want this person in because of the destruction that he can bring, doesn't necessarily make it a point where people should still want to, quote unquote, and I'm always encouraging people to go out and vote, but it doesn't necessarily make people want to go out and vote. And I think that's where Philly Greenman is talking about, as far as just because it's there, that don't mean we have to do it. And a lot of people have that mindset of saying, okay, just because we have this election coming up in exactly 8 weeks, you know what I mean? We 2 months from the election and people are still thinking about the lesser two evils, when you have people, hundreds, thousands of people screaming Kamala Harris's name. And we're about to hear a little bit more about that in 10 minutes. But Billy Greenman, I wanted you to respond as well.
What? Here's my question. Mm-hmm. Give me some policies that Donald Trump implemented, and I want to preface this. I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. Okay,
some people will beg to differ. Some people will beg to differ, right?
I'm a Democrat. I'm registered as a Democrat. I haven't voted for a Republican. I don't know since when, but I gotta be honest about stuff. So now, what policies did Donald Trump implement that specifically hurt the American freedmen, the African American? Give me one policy that he implemented that hurt us. Because I want to deal with just policy and not personality, because it's nothing in the Constitution that says the president has to have a certain personality. I'm dealing strictly with what his job is, and I want to know what policies has Donald Trump implemented, or did he say he wants to implement, that will specifically hurt us?
So when we look at first his track record, right? His track record going back to the 70s and his father,
I think
and
when
what
you put
have you, right?
Policy.
Yeah, that's
not personal. Yeah. Not personal, just policy.
That's not personal though. When we're talking about things that have been on the book, right?
We got to be able to separate the two. I'm dealing with just his political philosophy.
So his political philosophy, let's talk about abortion, right? The political philosophy. When you put Amy Barrett Cohen and you put Kavanaugh on the bench, right? When you put them on the bench, which ends up impacting in the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which disproportionately impacts whom? Black and brown women.
No, I'm saying what policy?
Well, I think that's the word he's going to say the word policy, because by definition, that is what, a lot of people have a question about. You know what I mean?
It's only policy that makes a difference. Nothing else. His personality doesn't make a difference. A council person or a lawmaker's personality doesn't make the difference. I want to see what they put on paper. So I don't care how they talk. I don't care what they say about anybody.
We're talking about what he did in office, right? His appointment of these justices, right? And we look at the tax cuts from what was that, 2017, 2018, the tax cuts to the rich, which impacted and continued to widen the racial wealth gap.
No, What widened the racial wealth gap is the fact that American freedmen haven't gotten reparations. There's data that says that if white people stop working today and don't work for another 228 years, we would only be equal as American freedmen economically. So that is not true.
Well, I do want to jump in and say there are some policies,
and I want to bring us some other guests too,
for sure. And there are some other policies. I mean, some policies that I would like to address, just like police reform. When it came down to when Barack Obama implemented a lot for police reform, Donald Trump came in and implemented policies that really just doubled back on everything that Barack Obama put in place for law and order. When it comes down to immigration policies, Donald Trump came in and just totally just disrupted everything that Obama did when it came down to immigration policies. So that right there hurts Black and brown people in general.
No, immigration.
To go back to the economic part about tax cuts, yes, he favored the wealthy when he came into office.
And so we have to think about the role that Congress had.
The wealthy as well.
And so we must think about the role that Congress has as well, right? Because these are the people, we know what, how a bill becomes a bill ultimately. But when we think about the people that are put in these places, so when we think about, because now it's starting to come to me, when we think about Betsy DeVos, right, the Department of Education, and how that ultimately end up gutting public education, impacted. I know he likes to go tout his HBC. I've given more money to niggas than niggas ever seen in their life. Right, to these HBCUs, when you put people like that in power. And so even if we say, okay, let's say zero policy, right? Let's say zero policy. When we look at the people that have been put into place, right, in these different places, when we get to the post office, when we start looking at all the joy at the post office, when we look at all of these different places, the people that he's implemented, the impact of that has definitely impacted Black and brown folk disproportionately. I want to get to Chris right quick. Chris, peace, brother. How you feeling?
Peace. How are you?
Can I say one thing, Chris, before you come in? And this is for the safety of both me and Phil. Phil, I think we need to put this out there. The views and opinions and all of those things, the comments.
This ain't word.
I'm just talking about for me in general. That are being said today does not affect any of the sponsorships, marketing, anything like that. So I just wanted to put that out there to cover all bases. But go ahead, Chris. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I do agree with the brother before about kind of how the overnight shift kind of took place for her, because again I keenly remember her and the Cory Bookers were kind of like, we weren't kind of feeling them, because I think my viewpoint is that the Obama, what we expected out of the Obama presidency and we end up not getting, and the kind of the feelings that we felt kind of made way for Donald Trump to get in. We expected a lot, and so I think when the last election, the 2020 election, when you had your Cory Bookers, Kamala, they kind of reminded us so much of kind of Obama and the things, the lack thereof, like how Tulsi Gabbard was able to get her out in just like one fell swing with about Kamala and her policies, and it was just interesting, very very interesting to me how we kind of overnight have kind of forgotten all of that, have not been kind of keen on her policies and things like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what she says. I've been watching NBC, and they talk about how they've been kind of grooming her with as far as debating, because she's been hiding ever since, she seemed like they've been kind of keeping her away from the camera because they don't want her to make any kind of mistakes. So it's going to be great.
So can I make a comment real quick? The brother mentioned DeVos, right? The one, the sister who he appointed to the school for education, right? So I'm a retired teacher. And I started teaching in 1989, and I stopped in 95. And today, still, 6 out of 10 people who graduate from high school across America can't read, write, or do math on a high school level. So it doesn't matter who's in that position. What matters is that for the American freedmen, we don't have the economic position to do anything. It doesn't matter which one of them get in office. Over the last 40, 50 years, it didn't matter who was in office. The African American, the American freedman has still been at the bottom of every list. my thing is that we have to focus on what our rights are as a distinct status people in America as American freedmen. Because check this out. Illegal immigrants don't vote. And the politicians give them everything they want. And we vote all the time. And the Democrats in particular don't give us nothing. So how good is voting when a people who are not even legal in the country gets everything from the elected official, and the people who are dedicated to them, like American freedmen to the Democrats, get nothing? That's the question.
I hear you, brother. I'm gonna put you back in the waiting room because I want to bring. I only can have a certain amount of people.
No problem. I'm getting ready to go to a watch party, but thank you for having me.
No doubt. And I yeah, we're gonna be here for a minute. Now, I definitely agree with him when he talks about the idea that, you know, the importance of Black folk mobilizing, right? So there's a guest trying to join.
And I also want to read Camille's comment as well. Peace and blessings. I'm disappointed in both parties. Most recent Democrat didn't even want to vote in a reparations trio bill. So we appreciate you for dropping that. I'm not sure exactly. So you know exactly what she's talking about when she said that.
Well, she's talking about in California. So it was
okay.
Yeah. And so I remember recently, because they were talking about withholding their vote in California, because of this was like within like the last 2 weeks, where they were talking about withholding their vote because they didn't vote. I'm a little fuzzy on it, but I do remember that because I remember the brother and the sisters that were out there. They were speaking passionately within, you know, whether it was City Hall or wherever they were at, about what was taking place.
Camille, and if you're online, if you can jump in and kind of give us some, you know, information about that, because Philadelphia is actually, well, we have already started our reparations task force. So to get some insight on that would be dope as well, just to know what's going on over there in Cali.
Word. So I'm gonna bring TK in.
Oh, that's my folks, actually. I mean, we are officially 60 seconds, 30 seconds away.
60 seconds away.
Or 30 seconds away from the very first 2024 official presidential debate against the, I would say, the incompetent. What would you call him, the incompetent candidate, or would you call her the incompetent candidate? Which one is it? Both of them? Okay, both. This is very new for me. You know what I mean? This time around, it seems really new.
Anytime.
TK, you real quick. TK, you there? I'm not sure why it's not coming up. Let me try Lente.
What were you gonna say, Chris? Talk to me.
I mean, anytime they playing hide away from the camera, like we all know that they're doing. I mean, that it kind of says a lot, you know, when they're scared to bring you in the public.
And I mean, the crazy part about it is, you know, just even the rules that they had to come up with, the back and forth, just to actually get the debate going, everything that they both had to agree to, even to the point where Donald Trump was using social media again to tweet out things that were not necessarily factual at the time, because her team didn't necessarily agree to those things. He was saying that it was going to be 3 debates. One was going to be one on September 4th. There was going to be one today. And then I believe it was going to be another one in October. And she said she never agreed to that. She honestly said out her mouth that she's willing to do more debates. She just wants to see how this one goes first. How do y'all feel about the fact that, and the debate has started as well, Phil, whenever you get a chance? I know Phil's producing and doing all that good stuff for us today on this podcast.
Yeah.
But how do y'all feel about the fact that it is one day before the anniversary of September the 11th? Do you feel like that was also played very well for the American people?
Don't nobody give a damn about September 11th no more.
I mean, people feel, right? People got feelings, you know? I'm just asking.
Oh, I'm about to.
You got Dick Cheney.
I'm about to bring it in, y'all. This is the last. Give me your last comment, Chris.
If we had a memory, Dick Cheney supporting her in September 11th, I'd stay far away from that. But that's just me.
Word. And so, what's up, Kay? You're in California, right?
Yeah, I'm from California. Hi, everybody. What's up?
Peace. Thank you for
calling from Cali.
What time is it right now? It's 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
It's 6 o'clock where I'm at.
6 o'clock. Oh wow, 3-hour jump. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, we behind on a lot of things. Clearly, California can't even get reparations CD signed because Master Sons
For sure.
I'm telling you.
I was actually mad that the debate was at 9 o'clock. I ain't gonna hold you. I thought that was, I didn't think that that was a good idea. I feel like with people, again, with the average everyday voter having to stay on the
So
East Coast, having to stay to 9 o'clock to watch this debate, and it's 90 minutes long. I think that's, you're not really thinking about the public for sure
Here
with
we
that
go.
one.
Let's watch the puppet show.
President. And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with
ain't that what they
elections
always
now
say?
less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock.
Shout out to all the Philadelphia reporters and journalists in the building. I know that feels amazing. Shout out to the grassroots leaders who are in the building. I know that feels amazing. Way to be a part of the conversation. Way to have a seat at the table. WRD is in the building. 98.5 is in the building. We appreciate you all representing.
2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
She got on a blue suit. What she got on? She got on blue. She has on. Is that black?
Kamala Harris.
It looks like navy blue.
Navy blue. Okay.
Welcome to you both. It's
Hillary
wonderful to
prepped
have
her
you.
well,
It's
I'm
an
sure.
honor to have you.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
Oh my
and
God.
I am actually the only person on this
Yes.
stage who has a plan
Sorry,
that is
I can't-
about
I
lifting
can't say
up
what
the
I
middle
wanna
class
say.
and working people of America.
Yes,
I
man.
believe
Say what
in
you
the
want.
ambition, the aspirations, the
Give
dreams of
respect
the
to
American people.
Vice
And that is
President.
why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. I was actually, my mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America.
What does that mean to the
My opponent, on the other hand,
I'ma
his
chill
plan
to the
is to
after
do what
party.
Well,
we've done
she
before,
was targeting
which is
his
to
talking
provide a
points
tax
because
cut for
that's exactly where he's
billionaires
going
and big
to big
corporations,
businesses.
which will result in
So I feel like
$5
she was
trillion
targeting his
to
points.
America's deficit.
But what does this mean
My
to the
opponent
majority
has
of
a plan that I
Americans who
call the
aren't who are
Trump
not
sales
starting
tax,
small
which would be a
businesses,
20%
who have no credit,
tax
who
on everyday goods that you rely on to get
Or
through the month.
education to start the business.
Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President
Yeah,
Trump, I'll give it to you.
she went right at him
First of all, I
respectfully.
have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that.
Yeah.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions
tariff
and
is gonna
billions
start
of
a war,
dollars,
my
as you
nigga.
know, from China.
Sorry.
In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so
Gonna
much
start a
money
war.
they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. we were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have
I wish I could fact check that one.
pouring into our country.
He's not even considering
prisons
COVID
and
and its
jails,
effects
from
that
mental
COVID had.
institutions and insane
That plays a
asylums,
role.
and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
There we go. Them nigga jobs.
Affected very soon. And you see
I said it twice. You know that's not. I don't even say that word.
throughout the United States. You
Good
look
Lord.
at Springfield,
He loves to
Ohio.
go off of
You
those
look
type
at
of people
Aurora
jobs,
in
Mexican
Colorado.
jobs,
They are
black
taking
people
over
jobs.
the towns. They're taking over buildings.
He ain't
Taking
said
over
nothing
the
about the
town.
Asians yet, though.
These are the people.
But he speaks to the fears that so many have, right? So he's speaking directly to people. Notice the difference. She's speaking in theory in general. He's attempting to speak directly to people to try and stoke some emotion.
I created one of the greatest
I don't even know if she knew what
history of our
theory in
country.
general means.
I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President
Those are
Harris
his
respond
talking
to the economy.
points. Like those are the things he's good at
love
right
to.
there, though.
Let's
Talking
talk
about border
about what
security, talking
Donald
about
Trump
immigration,
left
talking
us.
about jobs being taken
Donald
away.
Trump left
That's
us
when people
the
antennas
worst
go up.
unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Yeah,
And what
she
we
got
have
her.
done
She
is
got a one
clean
on
up
that one.
Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight
That's the Eminem B
is a
Rabbit.
detailed and
Right.
dangerous plan called Project 2025 that
Oh,
the former
man.
president
Oh,
intends on
God.
implementing if he
This
were
seemed like a
elected
rap battle
again.
at this point.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group
Oh,
of
that
people
just
that got
sparked every
together. They came up with
conspiracy
some
theorist
ideas.
on
I guess some
YouTube.
good, some bad. But it
Ain't
makes
like
no
we read it
difference. I
anyway.
have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic
There you
was
go.
not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic.
No,
we
you didn't,
handed
bro.
them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in.
The mics are hot.
Nobody's
She
ever
wants to say
seen
something
anything
bad.
like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns. We got masks. We did things that nobody thought
Ventilators for
possible.
the entire
And
world.
people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look,
So the
I went
mics
to
are not
Wharton
hot.
School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors,
But
think my plan
she
is a
bodied him
brilliant
right there.
plan. It's a great
Yeah,
plan.
and he
It's a
was
plan
ready.
that's
We
gonna
couldn't even hear the
bring
first
up
10
our,
seconds.
Our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
And he's correct. He's correct.
President, I do want to drill down on something.
It's not funny.
The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon.
Phil, people are trying to join the stream and it's saying that the stream is full or something like that for them to even view it. Should I send out the first link that you sent me earlier?
The economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll.
I'll dip off, y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
80 and 85 and even 90%.
We appreciate you, Chris.
All right, Chris.
Great, that their economy was terrible.
Yeah, it's a 6-person limit.
You heard what the president
Okay.
said there because the Biden administration did
Even just to watch?
a number of the Trump
No,
tariffs
not
in
to
place. So
watch.
how do you
To
respond?
watch, it's
Let's
just
be clear
Pac and Doc.
that the Trump
right, so the
administration
first link that you
resulted
sent me.
in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency.
And you can share it on
he ended up
Facebook, too.
selling
All right, cool.
American chips to China.
Because I got it.
to
I got the
help
stream.
them
I'll tag you in.
Improve and
It's
modernize
good. Got my
their
homie Dre in the
military.
building.
Basically sold us
Like
out.
my bro.
When a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because
It's not funny.
philosophies
It's
like
really
they have
not
and
funny.
policies like
Wow.
they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist
he's
professor
running out.
in
He's going
economics,
for the Marxist
and
sphere.
he taught her well. But when you look at what
She need to
she's
keep her
done to
composure.
our country,
Her father
and
is
when
a
you look at
Marxist,
these
though.
millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly.
Her
whereas I believe
responses, her
21
body
million
language
people, not
is
the 15
not
that
good.
people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than
Yeah,
New
she
York
just
State.
should look at him
pouring
and
in.
smile.
Just look
Yeah,
at what they're doing
she
to
shouldn't
our
use her
country.
hands. She shouldn't
They're
use facial
criminals. Many of
expressions.
these
She
people coming in are
should
criminals.
just take her time
and
with her
that's
body.
bad for
body
our
expression.
economy too. You know, you mentioned.
And I know
we'll
that's
talk
hard.
about
I know that's
immigration
hard being a
later.
woman.
Obama
That's
should
off
have
my
taught
head.
Immigration
her.
is the worst thing that can
Obama
happen
should have
to
taught
our
her.
economy.
That man swag.
They
I'm
have,
telling you.
and she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue.
But honestly, what is her policy? I think he's talking about Biden's policy and making it her policy as far as his comments and how he's, putting out the rhetoric as if she's the one that's the current president, when it's really Biden's policy.
And their reproductive
Yeah, but she also
In your home
assists
state
with
of
the
Florida, you
policies as
surprised
well.
many,
That's
with
true.
regard to your
She should have
6-week
been,
abortion
that
ban,
would have
because you
been like
initially had said
my
that it was
rebuttal.
too
Like
short,
I
and you said,
assisted with
quote,
these
I'm going to
policies
be voting
on
that
this
we
one,
need
this one,
more
this one,
than
this
6
one, this one,
weeks.
this
But
one, and
then
this
the
one.
very
And this
next
is how
day,
it had
you
an effect
reversed
on this
course
country.
and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's
The mics are not
execution, no
hot because she
longer
just said
abortion,
something
because
we
the
couldn't
baby is
hear.
born is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices,
Why her
we
face
were
look like
able
that?
to do that. Now, I believe in the
Yeah,
exceptions
she's
for
feeling on
rape,
the
incest,
expressions right
and
now.
life of the
She's
mother. I
giving.
believe
Fix your
strongly in it. Ronald
face.
Reagan did
Yeah,
also.
she's.
85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue
They're not
that's
voting
torn
on
our
it.
country apart for
What?
52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
That's fundamentally not true.
I was about to say that's not true. That's
Ohio-
definitely
And this
not.
is why
That's
you see
definitely
why I
not
don't
true.
talk about him.
Yeah, that's
Kansas,
not
lies.
true.
the vote was somewhat liberal.
Let me
much
turn my
more
mic
liberal
off.
than
My
people
mic
would have
hot.
thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great
That's
service
definitely
in
not
doing it. It
true.
took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to
You
get your
better correct
response
him.
to
She
President
better fact check.
Well, as I said,
She
you're gonna
better
hear both
fact
sides,
check.
and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the
yes.
intention that
Yeah.
they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
And they did exactly as
But-
he intended.
but what didn't
And now
Obama
in
do?
over 20
Right?
states,
If we're gonna have this
there are
conversation
Trump
about who he
abortion
selected,
bans,
Obama had
which
an
make it
opportunity.
I mean,
criminal
if we go all the way there,
for a
Clarence
doctor
Thomas
or
is in there
nurse
because
to
of Joe
provide
Biden.
healthcare
You
in
feel me?
one
We can
state,
take it all the
it
way there,
provides
Phil.
prison
You
for
know, when it
life.
comes down to these Supreme Court
Trump
justices,
abortion bans that make
honestly,
no
they all
exception
got in there
even for
nasty.
rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
I wish it was a
12 or
more of a
13-year-old
question.
survivor
She
of
really just
incest
asks like, why
being
should
forced
women
to
trust
carry a
you?
pregnancy
You know,
to
I wish there
term.
was more of a question
They don't
behind
want that. And
that
I
for Donald
pledge
Trump
to
when she
you,
first prompted,
when
I should say.
Congress passes a bill to put back
She's
in
pleading
place
to the American
protections
public
of
to
Roe
like
v.
look at
Wade,
her and not
as
his
President
lies.
of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national
She gonna keep
abortion
sending that. That is
monitor
that is
that would be
his.
monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
My
and
goodness.
It may take a little
Every
time,
legal
but for
scholar, this
52
nigga in
years,
the
this issue
absolutes.
has torn our country
Sorry,
apart.
my mic is
And
hot.
they've wanted it back in the states, and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion
I'm
ban?
ready for a
if it-
commercial. I got so much to
because
say.
again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated?
Yeah, Phil, I felt that
It
one
ended
too.
up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out
right.
and said, "We'll do it
Listen,
again. We'll
he
do
is
it a
going
different way."
off.
He went
And
out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss.
That was a really good
because
question.
she'd never be able to get it,
She
just
did her
like she
thing
couldn't
right
get
there
student loans
by
and couldn't
spinning
get
it to make it
student
seem
loans.
like
They
they're
didn't
not
touch
on the
to getting
same
student
page.
loans.
They're
They
not even
taunted
saying the same
young
thing.
people and
Right?
a lot of other people that
She
had
did a great
loans.
job with that.
They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand
I've
what has
never
been
heard that
happening
even
under
done.
Donald Trump's abortion ban.
Somebody,
Couples who pray and dream of having a
Dre, push
family
pause on your, not
are
pause,
being
push mute on your
denied
TV real quick.
IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond.
See, the mics are, I don't know if it's her mic or his
I have been
mic.
a leader on IVF.
But he's always get a
which is
chance to respond.
fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing,
What does that have to do with what you just said, bro?
It's not
will she
funny.
allow
Like,
abortion in the
we
8th
can't
month,
keep laughing.
9th
This is not
month,
even
7th
supposed to be
month?
entertainment.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question?
Okay,
which
mics
is
are hot.
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question
you
which
could,
is what we
you
want.
could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th
He's
month,
so
the 9th
redirecting.
month,
That's not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor.
And probably
former
after
governor
birth.
of Virginia. The governor of
Because
Virginia
because
said
when
we
he's talking
put
about the West
baby
Virginia
aside,
story.
and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
Yeah.
President Trump, thank you.
And that was
I'm gonna
2
turn now to
governors ago, by the
immigration
way,
and
people,
border
for those who are
security. We
listening.
know
It's
an
not
issue
the
that's
current
important to
governor of West Virginia. It
Republicans,
was the governor
Democrats, voters
before
across
the
the
current
board
seated
in this
governor who made
country.
that
Vice
comment.
President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help
Here
those
she
folks
go.
who are working there
This
right
this
now
the Kamala I know.
overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching
Rest in
tonight
peace, my
who
homie,
have been
Rich Homie
personally
Quan.
affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
What was the name of the bill she's referring to, Phil?
Understand, this comes at
I'm
a
not
time
sure.
where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will
It's a
also
comedy
notice
show
is that
now.
people start leaving his
Well,
rallies
she's going
early
down to his
out of
level.
exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers
Bless
on the
you.
border.
First, let
Thank
me
you.
respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And then showing
That's
them
what
in a
you're
different
doing,
light.
bro.
So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield,
It's such
they're eating
xenophobia
the
being.
dogs.
And if you haven't been to Aurora,
They're
Aurora has a
eating
lot.
the cats.
Aurora's in
They're
Denver.
eating-
Aurora's
they're
in
eating
Colorado,
the pets
right outside of
the
Denver.
people
It's like
that
a
live
very
there.
African
And this is what's
American,
happening
black and
in our
brown
country.
town,
And it's a
and it has a
shame.
lot to
As
offer.
far as
Honestly, it's not what
rallies are
he's making it
concerned,
to
as
be.
far
So
as
shout out to the
the
people in
reason they
Aurora,
go is
in
they like
Colorado.
what I say. They want to bring
I actually
our
had a great
country
time in
back.
Aurora
They
before,
want to make
honestly.
America great again. It's a very simple phrase: make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio,
Wow.
and
That's,
ABC News
that
did
was
reach
not
out to the city
even
manager there. He told us there have been no
called for.
credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm taking it from the city manager.
Their dog was
Answer your question. Ask your question. Get your
Wow.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
He's killing Colorado right now, by the way.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
See, and this is where, again, this is where she loses me, because what does this have to do with anything? This isn't a flex.
Congress member Liz Cheney.
Well, she's talking about
if you want to really
their views on border control.
Yeah, and she's trying to say that she's trying to come with this whole perspective that the United States needs to come back to, like, you know, unity as opposed to dissension.
No, I get the sentiment on the surface.
She's coming from a country, I mean, a state like California where border control is ridiculous.
Well, just in general, but when you unpack that, right? You talk about Dick Cheney, you talk about Liz Cheney, you talk about folks who have been also participated in genocide. It's not a flex to bring them up as somebody who voted for, or who saying, "Hey, we want you." It's just like one of those things. All right, cool.
It's a political flex. It's a political flex. It's not a flex to her people or the people she claims to represent, but it is kind of a political flex. You know what I mean? Because to be able to rock with those folks and try to say you came up with some type of policies or some type of impact to really hone in on border control, to her, that's why she said it, to appeal to those Republicans who was rocking with Dick Cheney and George Bush at that time. And I'm not combating you, Phil. I'm not combating you.
No. It's to highlight how abhorrent he is, where he's bringing even the strongest of enemies together.
They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books. With
What's
nobody else
Omarosa doing nowadays?
But they have done such a poor job.
No, in all seriousness,
Carson doing nowadays?
No, Omarosa is in law school at Southern University. She's finishing up her last year to be a lawyer.
Doing something to get her life together. What is Bessie DeVos doing? You know, we mentioned her earlier in today's show. What is that? What are they doing nowadays?
In fact, I got more votes.
They just
than
got
any
chewed out and
president,
spit
sitting
out.
president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to
if Donald Trump honestly goes to jail, we would kind of forget about his era. His era would not sustain a conversation for the next 4 years if he just actually goes to jail. I think we would stop talking about him. I think we would want to forget about those 4 years. The biggest thing that would come out of talking about Donald Trump is the fact that he was the president during a pandemic.
How would you deport 11 million undocumented
Oh, they wouldn't send
immigrants?
that manager. He got so much on
it.
everybody.
Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be
He's
going
ready.
door to door in this country?
Oh, hold on one second.
It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof.
All over the world. I got family in Jamaica. It's bad.
Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst
Oh, you
cities.
come after
They
FBI?
didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for
He had the
national
chuckle.
security
Yeah.
crimes,
He had the chuckle.
economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
She's talking about
So
Pence.
let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me.
I kind of agree.
One of those cases
The new voters,
was
for sure.
started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place.
Ooh, that was a good
the
question.
United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for
Do not let him respond, Lindsay.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took
That's
a
her second
bullet
time
to the
getting cut
head
off.
because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake Russia
agree.
investigation.
He shouldn't have this time though, Phil. She should never let him cut
President
off.
Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban
Never.
fracking. Now you don't. You
Ah,
wanted
here we go.
mandatory government buyback
Flip-flop.
programs
Let's
for
talk about
assault
all her
weapons. Now
flip-flops.
Your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so
How?
many of your policy
Great
positions
question.
changed?
Great
So
question.
my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking
She's not
vote
answering
on the
why she
Inflation
flip-flopped,
Reduction
though.
Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in
Every
diverse sources
environmentalist
of
just stood
energy
up on
so
their
we
feet.
reduce our reliance on foreign oil.
They actually want to
We have
reduce fracking.
had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes
But she's not
that
answering
we
the
cannot
question.
He's not
over-rely on
answering the
foreign oil.
question.
Why have you
As it relates
flip-flopped
to
on
my values,
issues?
let
She
me tell
just
you, I
recently
grew up
flip-flopped
a
on
middle-class kid
when it comes
raised by a hardworking mother
to grocery prices and
who
things like that.
worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when
Oh,
I was
she
a
redirected
teenager.
horribly.
The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work, to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having
She needs to
a
ask
friend
her.
when
No,
I was in high
you didn't
school who
answer
was
the
sexually
question.
assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and
Oh
children
my
from violent
gosh.
crime is
Oh
based
my
on a value
gosh.
that is deeply
This is a
grounded in the
master class of
importance
bull
of standing
jive.
up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security
Let her
and
cook.
Medicare
They'll let her
is
cook.
based on
And just
long-standing
like
work
him,
that
but
I have
wasn't the
done
question
to
about why
protect
did you
seniors
flip-flop
from
on
scams.
fracking and
My
immigrate
values
decriminalizing
have not
border
changed.
crossing?
And
Yeah.
That
what
was
is
the initial
important is
question.
that there is a president who
She flip
actually
flop on a lot of
brings
issues:
values and a
reparations, defunding the
perspective that is
police.
about lifting people up
She's a
and
corporate
not beating people
hack.
down and name calling. The true
Oh, my
measure
bad.
of
She's
the
not a
leader
hack. She's just
is the leader who
talking about
actually
name calling.
understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn,
He's
Queens.
killing it on the
And a
responses.
great father, and I learned a lot from
He's
him. But I was
ready.
given a
Smoke.
fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars. Many, many billions.
Many,
And
many
when people see it,
billions.
they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against
Talk
that
about it.
forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
She killed Pence with that one.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in
most people don't
Pennsylvania
want
will
fracking in
end on
Pennsylvania.
day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way,
This is when I jump in.
but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about
He's
all
still
the people that are
defending
pouring
those
into our
folks.
country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was
He's
the border czar. She
comparing
doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed
people
by the
coming
border. In fact,
across
she
the
said
border
at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's
to
because
the people
she knows what
that
a bad
stormed the
job they've
Capitol.
done. What about those people? What are they going to be
Wow.
prosecuted?
Pointing the
Yeah.
finger back.
People from countries
That's a
all over the
wild
world,
factor
not
right
just
there.
South America. They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime
He
rates are
hasn't
down
taken
all
any
over the world
accountability
because
in
of
this
it.
answer at all.
One of those, David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted. Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question.
You
As we move
might
forward
ask her
toward
that
another
question.
election, is there anything you
Is there a
regret
laugh
about
track?
what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done
Mary,
by me. It was
what's
done by
her name?
others.
Miriam
I said,
Balvel.
I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
Because she was the House Speaker? Is that why he's saying she was responsible, Phil?
Former
You
Speaker
think?
Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to
Possibly.
respond here.
Well, you know, she's the head
I was
Democrat
at
in
the Capitol on
charge.
January 6th.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
I was
So-
she has
the
nothing to do
vice
with people
president-elect.
coming
I
to
was
the
also
Capitol
an
with
acting
guns
senator.
and
I
stuff.
was
Like,
there.
how can she
And
control
on
that?
that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason.
Cool.
But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the
Anti-Semitic
president
hate.
then
You
at
see
the
how he
time
focuses.
say?
The focus
There
is
were
always
500
on Jewish
on each
folk.
side.
Respectfully,
Let's remember
I like my Jewish folk
that
who aren't
when it came
Zionists.
to the Proud
The
Boys,
focus is
militia,
always on these white folk, man.
the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for
It's
everyone
real.
watching who remembers what January
That's the only
6th
thing they were doing was
was,
anti-Semitic speech.
I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the
Sorry,
page.
sponsors.
And if
Potential
that was a
sponsors.
bridge too far for you, there is a place in our campaign for you.
Very
to
fine people.
stand
Very fine people.
for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the
I
candidate,
feel like every black person
has
around
said in this
the world
election there
who
will be a
disowns
bloodbath.
her as being black
If
felt what you
this
felt
and the
too.
outcome of this election is
Yeah.
not to his liking.
Because she
Let's
hasn't
turn
said
the
anything
page
about
on
the
this.
black
Let's not go
voters or
back.
the black people.
Let's
She hasn't said
chart a
anything
course
specifically
for the
to make us go
future
like, yeah.
and not go
Yeah,
backwards.
That's
defund
our
the
girl.
police,
Let me just follow up here.
defund the police,
It was
BLM,
a different
nothing.
term, and it was
She
a
hasn't
term
mentioned
that
anything
related to energy
specifically
because they've
straight on
destroyed
to
our
black
energy
folks so
business.
far.
That
And
was
we're
where
about
bloodbath was.
almost an
Also,
hour in.
on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked.
And he spoke
Laura
directly to
Ingraham,
his supporters
Sean Hannity,
a couple times.
Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go,
Because this is
an
where we talk
extra
about
sentence, they
Democrats
will see it
being
was perfect.
spineless.
It was debunked in almost every newspaper.
Or
they
leaning
still
into
bring it
who
up,
they
just like
are.
they bring 20,
Right.
Or
25
just
up.
This is why
automatically
we-
Bring
assuming
all
that
of
they're
this
going to
stuff
get the
up.
black
I
vote,
ask you
period.
this. You talk
This
about
is why we
the
go. We
Capitol.
look elsewhere.
Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border. How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very
I'm
proud
tired
to
of
do
him
it.
talking
I
about
would say we would
immigration at
both
this
leave
point. For
this
someone
debate
whose foreign
right now.
policy is
I'd like to
horrendous.
see her go down
But when you think
to
about it,
Washington,
so many
D.C.
people
during
are
this debate
upset
because we're
about that.
wasting a
You know
lot
what I
of
mean?
time.
Like so
Go
many
down to,
people
because she's
in
been
different
so
parts
bad,
of
it's
the
so
country
ridiculous.
are
Go
furious
down to
about like he
Washington,
brought up
D.C.
Springfield
and
and
let her
Aurora
sign a
because
bill
if you
to
go to
close
these
up the border.
small
Because
towns,
they
they
have
are
the right to
completely
do
turned
it. They
around
don't need
now with
bills.
people who
They
have
have the
come
right to do it.
through
The president of
from
the United States, you'll get him out of
immigration
bed,
and then
you'll wake
also
him up
just
at
the
4 o'clock
border
in the
just
afternoon,
being
you'll say,
wide
come
open
on,
as well.
come on down to the office, let's sign a bill.
Correct.
If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight.
Unlike
Did he
J6.
say
Oh
J6?
my
That-
God, he
really
said
brings
it.
us
It have
Phil.
a nickname?
truth
It has a
these times that
nickname.
we're living in.
Not
Mr.
J5
President,
from
3.5
Blank
years
Man,
after you
but
lost the 2020
J6.
election, you repeatedly
Oh my
falsely claimed that you
God.
won. Many times say you
Unlike
won
the
in a
Central Park
landslide.
5, right?
In the
Come
past
on
couple of
now.
weeks
Let's
leading up
talk
to this
about it.
debate, you
This
have
guy
said,
right
quote,
here,
you
man.
lost
This
by
guy
a
right
whisker,
here.
that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
It's the freaking shade.
I didn't detect sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't
Disrespect.
quite make it. And we should just point out here as
going
clarification, and you know
at
this,
it.
you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President,
And I can agree with that.
Vice President Harris,
And
you
let
heard
it
the
burn.
president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes.
I don't think
he
I don't
did
think
not
the
lose
Biden
election,
Harris team
that was
did
won
it
by
though.
President
I think that
Biden,
they were a
and
huge
yourself.
after effect
But
as
I do
to
want to
why
ask you
we
about
are in a
something that's come up in
decline.
the last couple
Exactly.
of days. This was a post
It
from
started with his
President Trump
administration.
about the
But I'm just talking about
election,
in
just weeks
general,
away. He
like
said,
government
when I
in
win,
general,
those people who
the entire
cheered,
idea
and
of
then
it
he
needs to
lists
be
donors, voters,
abolished.
election officials.
You
He
know what I'm
says we'll be
saying? So it's
prosecuted
all
to the
like
fullest
capitalism.
extent of the
All of
law,
this is
which will
is
include
in
long-term
decline.
prison sentences.
Yeah.
One of
Just a
Well,
matter of
Ukraine's
time.
top lawyers responded
Babylon
saying, we
always
won't let
falls
Donald
in every
Trump intimidate
empire.
us. We
It's
won't let
history.
him suppress
That's
the
true.
vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Is she saying his
But we
impeachment was
cannot
the people's
afford to have a
decision?
president of the United
Yeah.
States
No,
From
just
the
him
vote-
him
From
losing.
the votes.
attempts,
Yeah,
as
from
he
Oh,
did
okay,
in the
okay, okay.
past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I
World
have
leaders
talked
are
with
laughing at the
military
United
leaders,
States.
some of whom
Did
worked
you
with
say that
him,
earlier though?
and they say you're a
It's the
disgrace.
exact thing.
And
being
when you
laughed at.
then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just tell you about world leaders.
Where is the commercial
Viktor
break?
Orban, one of the most respected men. They call
It
him a
ain't nothing. You
strong
gotta
man.
tough
He's
this
a
out. This
tough
like
We supposed to get two
Smart.
commercial breaks. I got something to
Producer of
say.
Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes.
She
And
got
when she
0
ran,
votes.
She was the first one to leave because she failed.
She
And
did.
Now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President.
with
But
it.
Phil,
because
you can't
Your time is up.
calculate that, and that's factual
Right now,
information. The
the
numbers don't lie,
Israel-Hamas
yes,
war and
but she wasn't
hostages
running
were
for
still
president
being
at
held,
that time.
Americans
So
among them.
What
it
was
wasn't.
President Harris in December.
Yeah, she was running for to be the Democratic nominee
When,
But,
but she was running.
it matters how.
I wouldn't say
in
officially.
2020,
It
and then
wasn't.
she had to drop out.
Okay,
because she
okay.
got-
I thought you were talking about earlier this year, at the top of the year, to get the.
Oh, no.
Okay, okay, my bad.
So
Okay.
yeah, because he's saying that basically it was handed to her on a
Yeah,
silver
yeah,
platter.
for
Just
sure,
last
for sure,
week,
for sure.
Prime
I
Minister
totally agree
Benjamin
with that now. My
Netanyahu
bad.
said
here
there's
we
not
go.
a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would
Listen
he
to
do
her
it?
bullshit.
Well, let's understand how we got here.
Don't
On
start that
October
October 7th. Oh my
Hamas,
God.
a terrorist organization,
And this is
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
look at the
Many
language
of
that's
them
used.
young people who were simply attending a concert.
Look at the language
Women
used.
were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel
And she's
has
still
a right to defend itself. We
reporting
would.
lies.
And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
Have been
Children,
killed. You got
mothers.
slaughtered versus
What
killed.
we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always,
I'm mad
I
at
will
Donald
always
Trump's
give
facial
Israel the
expressions
ability
right
to
now.
defend itself.
He's doing a lot better
in
than her,
particular,
though.
as it
A lot better than her.
as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
And a leader
President Trump,
that the
how would
country
you
can implement on the
negotiate
low
with
level.
Netanyahu and also
Indirect
Hamas in order
rule.
to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years.
Was that a real
have gone into Ukraine and killed millions
backing
of
by
people.
Putin
When
for
you
the
add it
Harris
up, far worse
administration,
than people
or
understand what's going
was
on
he
over
playing
there.
when he endorsed her?
But when she mentions
Who?
about
Putin.
Israel, all of a sudden,
Oh,
He made
yeah.
that.
she hates
That
Israel.
was joke. Okay.
She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If
Shouts
she's
to all
president,
HBCU
I
graduates out
believe
there in the
that Israel
world.
will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East.
The
This would have
Houthis.
never happened. I will get that settled and
Yeah,
fast.
you
And I'll
gotta
get
sound
the
empathetic
war
right there.
with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true.
I was a little girl.
My entire
When I was a
career and
little
life
girl,
supported
I had a
Israel and the
flower.
Israeli people. He knows that.
And
He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I
Yeah,
think
so
he
what
meant it,
was it real?
because what he's gotten away
probably-
with
I-
is
it's
absolutely
probably tongue-in-cheek.
incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak
Oh, I
and
said, I definitely heard it.
incompetent, and they are.
Definitely a
They're
thing.
grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic.
Okay, is it 10 o'clock on the dot?
presidential
Okay,
debate
we're
from the
5
National
minutes over 10.
Constitution
All
Center
right.
right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
this was rough. We'll get some of your thoughts.
Yeah.
With this.
I have a lot to say. I would like to start with our guest, though, Phil. Let's get our guest in. Let's unmute all our guests. We appreciate you, Dre, for sticking around and rocking one out with us for the first half. I would love to hear what you got to say, especially because this is my bro, by the way. This is my guy, Dre. Especially because you are a part of a fraternity. He kind of threw the sorority card out there for her, talking about she'd rather go chill with her sisters than actually be the vice president of the United States. I would love to hear what you guys say, Dre. Talk to me.
I mean, well, one thing about just on that point in general, like being a part of a sorority, fraternity, just Divine Nine, period, I think that being around that collective, you have, folks that can give you insight on what's right, what's wrong. You can decipher what's right, what's wrong. You're not sitting around a bunch of, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not sitting around a bunch of dummies or anything like that. One thing that I was noticing, he did a very good job of keeping his facial expressions kind of like mute and mild to where you're not going to get too much out of him, which I think people grasp onto that because once you start showing like, like Kamala did, it kind of throws where you on one side versus the other. And when I first joined, they were talking about tariffs. And one thing I know about like tariffs is adding extra tax on things will get you a couple things. It's going to probably get you bad quality when it comes to things coming over here, because we aren't makers of products. You have to outsource a lot of the things in these other countries. So
You'll piss Trump off talking about we
yeah,
not making some products. He think
look,
everything made in America.
we really not though. And to be real with you, like when it comes to just certain countries, like they are rich in their natural resources, like certain countries with coffee beans and things like that. Southern, those like South America and things like that. But things that we can't produce at a high frequency, and now you want to add extra tariffs on it, which has other countries probably like, well, we just not going to give America the best quality product. Yes, we'll give them something, but it won't be the best quality. And we're already suffering when it comes to just quality in general, quality of life in general over here. So I think that was just like a downside. And then the last point I'll make is they really not answering the questions. Neither one of them. They are they're avoiding, they're deflecting, and then two, they just need to fucking cut the mics off when it's not their time to talk. Like it's just I really hate that about like how serious the country is supposed to be about these things. And the little things like that, by keeping a hot mic and having them interrupt, it doesn't make for a quality debate to me.
Mhm.
So I'll stop there.
I love a good high mic. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know, when it comes down to these political candidates, I want them to show who they really are. You know, we want them to give their personality, to give their, little spice here and there so we can know how they're going to carry it when they get to these other tables in other countries. Because people come in just as hard as Donald Trump when it comes to these conversations. They might not, throw the little tidbit of shade, but they definitely going to address her as a woman when she sits down. They're going to address her as a black person when she sits down, and then they're going to address her as a black woman when she sits down. And we already know how black women are viewed and seen and treated, not just in America but throughout, this entire world. So I love a good hot mic. Talk to me, Phil.
Yeah, no, I want to speak to that point, right? Like, we recognize that this is all performative. We are long past the days where there's a such thing as really, truly an undecided voter. Now we know
Right.
our Muslim family. We know that individuals who are concerned about reparations. We know individuals who are concerned about what's happening in Palestine. They're saying they're uncommitted because they aren't seeing a strong enough response from Kamala specifically regarding what's taking place there. But ultimately, this is performative. Everybody knows who they're voting for in this election at this point. This isn't the 90s
I don't
where
agree
it's
with
just
that,
like,
Phil. We got these young
wait,
voters coming in.
hold on. No, but they're still coming in with a lot more information. They're coming in with a lot more awareness, right? When it comes to, we're talking about what's happening down the lineage. We know these types of things are passed down anyway. Like if you grow up in a Democratic family, you're more likely to be Democratic and vice versa. In comparison to the 70s and the 80s and 90s, they're at one point, even though they was on the same type time of BS, there was still a slight level of decorum, right? That existed. And there was also this idea of, okay, let me try and potentially sway some folks. There's just two extremes at this point. There's no give, right? And so this is where we talk about when, that comment where we see on the memes, if what is it? We could have different political views and still be friends. No, not at this point. That might have been true in 1990 or 1980, but at this point, they're so polar opposites that we know where folk are. But it's back on. I want to bring it back onto the screen right now.
For sure, but I do want to just piggyback on what you said about the performative situation, Phil, when we do get back.
Or more. Because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 200.
Is there a laugh track, or am I the only one hearing
They're
this?
into 100
No,
to
seriously.
150. They
I
should
don't
be
know. I
forced
sound like
to
people laughing at
equalize.
me. I'm like,
With
is there
that
a
being
small
said,
audience in the
I want
back?
to get the war
Only
settled.
media
I
and
know
press
Zelensky
are
very
allowed
well,
in the
and I know
room.
Putin
They have a
very
spin
well.
room,
I
they
have
call
a
it.
good relationship.
Yeah.
Okay,
and they
okay. Thank you,
respect
thank you.
It's the
your
sitcom.
president, okay?
The
They
sitcom
respect
laugh.
me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign
We
like
can't
a
hear
dog.
you.
We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up.
We have a
Just to
president that
clarify the
doesn't
question,
know he's alive.
do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander.
Shannon, as soon as it goes back on break, we're going to definitely get you on the mic. We want to hear from you as well. I see your comments in the chat.
President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe
that's one of the best things she said all day.
Says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, They sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as
you shouldn't tell many people you met with him.
As a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows
But he asked if she met with Putin,
understanding that
and
the
she said that she
alliances
met
we
with
have
Zelensky,
around
so
the
she didn't
world
even.
are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not
Yeah, I had water. Or is that
our
just me?
enemies
But
because
why didn't
you
she say, "I
adore
did not
strong
meet
men
with
instead
him,"
of caring
and
about
3 days later?
democracy? And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility.
She's putting her
in terms
attorney
of
hat on right now.
ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit
Phil, can you hear me?
of personal flattery.
You talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
They
He
cannot
got these
continue to allow this
countries,
man to cut
the
off.
28
They
countries
cannot
at the
do that.
time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years,
I think
we
they're
were
like, you
paying
know what? As
almost
long as we could
all of
keep it
NATO.
going, give
We were
them
being
an extra
ripped off
15,
by
20
European
seconds.
nations, both
Let's
on
just do it
trade
to
and on
avoid
NATO.
any
I got them
issues.
to pay up by
No,
saying
they
one of
just
the
shut the
statements he
mic
made
off,
before,
put music
if you
on.
don't pay,
They do it
we're
at the
not going to
Emmys.
protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs
We only
that
support the
he's ever seen
NAACP
done.
awards around here.
I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour
I
of the
haven't watched
debate.
Emmy
And
since
we
they
witnessed
slapped
a
Chris
poignant moment
Rock,
today
so
on Capitol
I
Hill,
have to
honoring the
see that
soldiers who
clip.
died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President,
Aw.
do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And
Oh,
as
we're
of
paying for a
today,
war now
there is not
in
one
Palestine.
member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He
She's not answering the
negotiated
question.
directly
She's
with a terrorist
redirecting.
organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 terrorists, Taliban terrorists.
You think it's going to end in 90
released.
minutes
Now
exactly,
get
or are they
this.
going to
No,
give us
get
more
this.
time?
Fam, it has to
And
end.
the
Yeah.
president at the time invited
Respectfully,
the Taliban
I've
to
checked
Camp
out.
David,
Yeah.
I ran out of fake laughs.
They should have definitely gave us those
a
2
place
commercial
where
breaks
we
a little bit earlier
honor
in the
the importance
conversation.
of American diplomacy,
Because
where
also,
we
again, it
invite
goes
and
back to that
receive
point of what are we really
respected world
learning?
leaders.
Yeah.
We're now learning.
And
She just put
this
issues on her
former
page.
president,
Because when
Right?
she
president
was asked the questions
invited
about
them
policies and why she flip
to
flopped, she didn't go
Camp
there with us.
David because
And
Exactly.
she
does
still
not
didn't say
again
anything
appreciate
specifically for
the
Black folks.
It's
role
nothing
and
about. So this
responsibility
is just
of the President of the United
My
States.
biggest issue is he
to
brought
be
up her
commander-in-chief
sorority. That would have
with a
been the
level
best
of
point
respect.
to
For
talk
her.
about
This
who
gets
her
back
sorority
to
is.
the point
Yeah.
of how he
You know,
has
and a little bit of
consistently
history.
disparaged and demeaned
And how
Oh
she's
members
yeah,
of
proud
the
to be black.
military,
Just something.
fallen
Shit.
soldiers.
She got too many
and the
talking
work
points to
that we
remember.
must
She
do
couldn't even go
to
there with
strengthen
yeah.
it.
And
the
So she
being
got too many.
Negroes,
respect of the
She
United
can't remember
because
she's
being
black.
Negro was
around
at
the
the.
world.
If that's one
President
thing
Harris,
Philly
thank you.
Green man
President Trump's
had,
response
being
to
Negroes
Rosie
at the end of the
began the
list.
negotiations
Yeah.
with the
Damn.
Taliban.
You know?
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force.
That
within
deserves a pause. I
Afghanistan.
got
They don't
involved
bother
with the
doing that
Taliban. Like
because, you know,
that.
they deal
That's
with the wrong
all my
people all the
antennas
time.
went up. Like, what do you mean
But
by
I
that?
got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul,
Not the
don't
name
do it
dropping.
anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a
Abdul
picture of
probably
my
like,
house?"
bro,
I said,
why
"You're
you
gonna
had
have
to say
figure
my
that out,
name?
Abdul."
I was
And
thinking
for
that with other
18
people
months,
too who
I
named you a
had
job. I
no
was like,
treaty.
dang, I don't want to be
Negotiated
associated with you,
with
dog.
Mike Pompeo. It was a very good
I told you
agreement.
that
The reason
on the
it was
humbug.
good, it was
Exactly.
we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now.
Why
to
do you
American
keep saying her
politics in this
boss?
country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
Finally, we
and now
talking
she
about
wants to be
black.
known as
Yay.
black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Why is this a
I think
question?
it's
Like, why
I
is
mean,
this a
honestly, I think
question?
it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president.
I
who
think
has
as a journalist, he's
consistently,
trying to
over
make
the
it
course of his
make sure
career,
that this is not about race.
attempted to
he's
use
trying
race to
to
divide the American people. You know, I do
dumb
believe
down
that
the
vast majority of
conversation
us know
about
that we
Donald
have so
Trump
much
being a
more in common than
racist,
what separates us, and we
and
don't want
that's something that
this
Kamala can
kind
stand
of
on, is that
approach
he
that
is
is
a
just
racist.
constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
But that's what you do when you invest in
President Trump,
Israel.
this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive
Leslie is
presidency
blowing me.
in the history of our
she
country.
she need
There's
to
never
stand
been
her
anything
ground,
like it.
man.
They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person
What?
that has to stretch back years, 40,
Them
50
young men
years
spent
ago,
years
because
in
he's
prison,
nothing now. I
incarcerated
built
for a
one of the
crime they
greatest
did not
economies in the
commit.
history of the world.
Oh,
And
he
I'm going to
just.
build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger.
They
But they're
never pled
destroying our
not guilty. They
economy.
were
They have
found
no
not
idea what a
Not
good
guilty for a
guilty.
crime
economy
that they
is.
didn't commit.
Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this. She
They
is
pled
Biden.
not guilty from the
She's trying
day
to
they
get away
were
from
arrested,
Biden. I
the
don't
day
know
that
the
they
gentleman.
were
She says
picked out of
she
a
is
lineup
Biden.
for something they
The
did not do.
worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Time's up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly.
And you see how her mic is off,
Clearly,
but every time
I
he
am not
goes
Joe
in for a
Biden,
quick response,
and I
he's
am
heard.
certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people.
Stop. She's
I
her
believe in what we can
voice.
do to strengthen
Optimism.
our small businesses, which is why
I'm sorry.
I
Maybe
have
I'm
a
just
plan. Let's
cynical.
talk about
No,
the
her
Yeah, we
voice
gotta
plan.
give
is
her.
annoying. I
And
wish
let's compare
Michelle
the
Obama could
plans.
have ran for
I have a
presidency.
plan
Honestly,
to give
like
startup
damn,
businesses
Michelle would have
$50,000
bodied
tax
Trump.
deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's
We
life.
already know,
She
To
keep
help
talking
you
about that,
in that
yeah.
most critical stage of your child's
You're
That's like
beating
her
development.
it down
fourth
I
our
have a
time.
throat.
plan
Yeah.
that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream.
There
by
is no American
offering
dream.
a
There never
There's
has
no
down
been.
American
payment of
dream.
$25,000 down payment assistance
It's an
for
American
first-time home
delusion,
buyers.
an
That's the
illusion.
kind of conversation I believe, David,
$25,000
that people
for a
want
first-time
tonight,
home
as
buyer,
opposed
so
to a
you can pay
conversation that is
for your
constantly
home
about
twice
belittling
because you're paying
and
so much in
name-calling.
interest.
Let's turn the page.
Like, what are we
Vice President
talking
Harris.
about?
And then
Thank
she's
you.
in the
Let's turn
city
to
of
policy.
Philadelphia
Let's
where
turn
our
to
property
policy.
taxes just went up.
President Trump,
Let's turn to
Listen.
policy,
she has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
They told him
fracking
every
in
time she say
Pennsylvania
that,
or anywhere
talk
else.
about what
That's
he's
what her
taking away.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
Yes,
respond to.
I'm sorry,
she
we're
is
gonna
right
please
about that.
respond, Vice
She
One
should get a
time
chance to
what he
respond.
said
President Trump, this is
multiple
now your
Yes.
third
Look at
term
him.
as president.
Yes.
You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. It's not very good
Yeah,
today.
because you guys
And
didn't
what
want
I
to pass
said
the
that if we
original
come up with
that
something,
he
and we
came
are
up
working
with.
on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this.
Well,
I
he's a sucker
inherited
too.
Obamacare
So we
because
got
He
to
is.
Democrats
factor that
He
in.
wouldn't
is.
change
But
it.
I
They
mean,
wouldn't vote
he,
for it.
you
They
know,
were unanimous. They
what
wouldn't
you
vote
gonna
to
do? It's the
change it.
system.
If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in this
A lot of good people,
administration.
man. He like
We got
Dr.
the bad ones.
Umar.
We had some real bad
Good
ones too,
people.
and so did they. They
Very
got really
good
bad ones. The
people.
difference is they
Good
don't get rid of
people.
them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
And she ran away
2
from
years
that.
later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance
Yeah,
option.
exactly.
What is your
Flip-flop.
plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But
See, I guess she ignored the flip-flop.
Previous point.
Well,
she
semi-answered the question.
I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma,
Ooh, the
if someone was a
violin.
breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare.
They love that
to negotiate
$35 insulin. They gonna talk about
He never
that.
did. We did.
They gonna talk
And
about
now
that.
we've capped the cost
Yeah,
of
but they not gonna say
$5
it's
a month. Since I've been vice
Or the
president,
lack of
we have capped
preventative
the
care
cost
that
of
they've
prescription
changed.
medication for seniors at $2,000.
Yeah, they're not
a
gonna
year.
get it to, hey,
When
wait,
I am
it's
president,
free,
we will
right?
do
Because
that
that's
for
too
all
much like
people,
socialism.
Understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those
The
who
affordable
can
health
afford
care
it.
is
the
definitely
plan has
something
to be
I
to
believe
strengthen
should
the
be
Affordable Care Act,
a right
not
to
get
every
rid of it.
American.
Pass
Sure.
this
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms of
you.
Healthcare
where
in
Donald
general
Trump
should,
stands on
All
you
right,
that.
I
know,
want to move
should
to an
be
issue that's important
quality
for a lot
healthcare
of
should be accessible to everybody.
I wish Donald Trump
John
actually
McCain
had some of the
fought
concepts that
Obamacare
he's
for
thinking
10
about
years.
to at least put
It
on the
wasn't
table for
only
us.
him. It were all of the Democrats
No way.
that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve.
And you see how he's still calling it
insurance for
Obamacare
people,
and she
private
called it the
medical
Affordable Care
insurance.
Act.
That's another
Two
thing
different
she
words.
doesn't want to give.
President
People are
Trump-
paying
Or
privately for
title.
insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with
Climate
regard to the
change.
environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now
they
is
said right
either
now in
being denied
California,
home
it's like
insurance or it's being
110.
jacked
They
up.
in the heat wave.
You ask
And
anybody
Louisiana,
who
it's
has
already
been,
hurricane season for them.
the victim
We've had
of
like
what
over
that
171
means in terms of
fires in
losing
the
their
past like
home,
15
having
years.
nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs.
So it didn't happen
this
under
last
Donald
month.
Trump.
It's
Like he not
going,
Donald
they're
Trump.
all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let
Was this
that.
a black
Put
these
tariffs on those
people,
cars
or
so
was
they
this
can give it to our country because they will kill
a
United
Democrat
Auto
these
Workers
people?
I
and
think
any
he
auto
specifically
worker,
just
whether
talking
it's
about
in
Joe Biden and
Detroit or
Kamala.
South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to
I
business
think it
and
was all the above.
manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from
Ooh,
Ukraine.
that was a
They
low
get all
shot.
this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
My Lord.
Woo, man! First off, their timing is impeccable, right? They're not doing a good job right now as far as just making sure that everyone is getting the allotted time that they're supposed to have to answer these questions. And we're technically 7 minutes over the debate time, you know. So when it comes down to ABC, do you think that they're doing an incredible job as to what Donald Trump was putting out there as far as Fox? Do you think ABC's doing a good job, or do you think Fox should have been the one to get the ticket?
It's like pick your poison at this point. I think they both would have let him. I think they both have their issues as far as like with timing. I think Fox is a little bit more timely. I think both of the moderators were a little bit more cowardly. I think the male one, I forgot his name. He's an anchor. He's usually good with cutting people off. Yeah, he does a great job. The female moderator, not so much. She got pushed around.
She did a little bit.
And she did. One thing I can say before I leave you guys, it's very disheartening. I mean, I'm not really for, government leadership when it comes to like hoping that there could be something done for our Black community when it comes to our executive leaders and our assembly members to an extent. There are some good assembly members that I have met as a grant writer. But as far as us getting a little bit more of our reparations and our voices heard, I haven't heard anything about that. Some of the issues with grants not being offered to BIPOC or Black-owned businesses, that's something Kamala Harris should have honed in on.
She really didn't. I would say she didn't speak to the Black Americans at all. I don't think she really took her time to really make sure that her talking points were going to be for us and by us. I think she really just made sure that she had a wide range of things to talk about. So she can match his energy if he ever came left or if he was coming right, she can hit him back with a 1-2 punch. But I don't think that what we as Black Americans thought she was going to do today on tonight's stage, which is one of the biggest stages that everyone was looking at her for, because we was like literally waiting for her to talk policy. We were literally waiting for her to show who she is and how she would be, our next president. Because again, she has been the vice president for the past 4 years, but yet people are still questioning her as an entire person, as far as being a political candidate. So, or just even her background, is she Black or is she not Black? The fact that we're still talking about this 56 days into the presidency is crazy to me.
Yeah, and I think.
And that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, like, it's very disheartening because just to hone in on some of the issues that they didn't talk about and its discrepancies on how it's affecting our Black community, like with the housing issues, the housing crisis, it's affecting the Black community the worst. Nationally, we are
Childcare as
the
well.
highest. Yeah, we are one of the highest that are being affected by this housing crisis, and dealing with homelessness. Our population is the highest as well. And of course, we have Native Americans, Blacks, the Black community, our community, and then we also have the Latino community that's being affected by it drastically as well. So a lot of communities of color are being affected, and she's not talking to those specific Americans. She's more catering to the white Americans. She's not talking about the lack of grants. She's not talking about increasing wages, rent control.
I actually did not hear that the whole time. Anything
Yeah,
about wages.
increasing wages, rent control. She's not talking about student debt that failed when her and Biden were trying to, give back funding.
I'm still waiting for mine to
debt.
be dismissed.
You know what I'm saying? Like, she's not honing in on those issues. And so she's looking like a person who is not going to have our communities back. Plus, we have so many issues on a state level. Philly, I know you guys are going through your issues, and you guys are also starting your task force. California, we are pissed. The Democrats out here have really disappointed us with their reparations trio bill, which was supposed to make history. And then on top of that, you have the Black Caucus that also, we had a lot of house niggas that were a part of the Massa Sons and decided to flip-flop last minute and change their mind and say, oh, we don't really agree with this trio bill we helped put together. Something was in the water. And so we're dealing with that. And so many Black individuals are feeling, why stay with the Democratic Party when our own community and the Democratic Party that we believe in is failing us? And so they're moving to the Republican. And that's it.
Yeah, right. So we're going to put a pin in that. They're doing their closing statements right now.
And an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need.
Was she about to cry there?
Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things.
I love it, man.
Hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Talk to the city of Philadelphia.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm saying, I ain't gonna lie. I'm so glad that's over.
Thank you. That was.
We are here live on ABC with our post-debate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that was over. It was a good debate though. Like if you
You
just
think
talk,
so?
I think it was a good debate to kick it off, right? To kick off the fact that we are less than 60 days into the presidential election. They're gonna have to do another one. I feel like it was a good debate to really just hear what they both, have to say as far as where they're coming from. I agree with Kay. We didn't get any answers. I agree with Dre. They're like going around to answer the questions, but it was a good debate to be like, this is literally what we have. This is the two options. And you heard it first here live in the city of Philadelphia, what we need to do as far as picking and choosing the next president of the United States. If we didn't have that, we will still be going off of hearsay. We will still be going off of backtrack records. We will still be going on what she was doing as a senator and what he did about 4 years ago. So with them getting on the stage today and actually talking about it in real time, it does give, something for the voters to go off of.
Word. So I will say that from when we talk about from the duopoly, the Democrat and Republican, yeah, these are the two people who are at the forefront, and one of them probably will be president, right? Well, we can't neglect that we have Jill Stein, we have Cornel West. I believe, even though Robert Kennedy said he's going to vote for Trump, I think he is still on some ballots. Like I know, like Michigan, he's on that ballot. So I just wanted to put that out there because there is more progressive options for those who do lean that way. I agree with you in that this brought the two folk. This like being in school, right? You got the person in one class, yeah, they ain't ish. I'm gonna F them up when I see them. It's on site. You got the other person in the other class saying the same thing. And so now they both came to a head and they were put in front of each other. And they both tried to talk their best game, which wasn't their best game. Well, for 45, it probably was. And I found Kamala to be less about policy and really more just about feeling about vibes and feeling her way through this debate. It wasn't, hey, I'm not going to stoop to your level. I'm going to clap back. I'm going to push back against some of those things I'm going to avoid. So from just a professionalism standpoint, what you might expect from your highest office in the country, it was definitely lackluster. But yeah, it definitely, people just wanted to see it's Jerry Springer. It's why Jerry Springer ran for 25. It is. It's why Jerry Springer ran for 25 years, right? We don't necessarily believe any of them, right? We know when they go on there, but we know what? We know when Steve's standing up there and they both standing up, we know it's a possibility of being a fight. Mm-hmm. I don't think we gained any new information regarding, again, Kamala just put out her issues. You would think that would be something she would really focus on. But that's not the case because we recognize that, honestly, the American people, a majority of them, they're not really concerned about policy to that extent, right? It's
I
about
disagree with that. I feel like when she first jumped in and she got into the conversation, especially when she was down there in Atlanta, people were specifically asking her, what is her policies? What is she going to do, especially around the Black community? What is her stance for the Black voters? Why does she automatically think she's going to get the Black voter or the woman's vote? You know what I mean? Like, I think policy is a big deal to the average voter, for sure. I think more people are leaning into policy because we're coming out of such a debacle with Joe Biden and what he got going on and what he has done for the past 4 years. We thought everything he said he was going to do 4 years ago, he was going to stand on, and he didn't stand on a lot of what he said he was going to do for the American people. So I think policy is a really big deal right now because we didn't get a lot done over the past 4 years.
you to that point, right? I would think and I don't want to say like folk don't care about policy. Folk care about what impacts them for sure, right? But I do think in 2028 you'll see a going back to more in a debate, folk talking about policy, because you're not going to have an extremist like Trump who is going to be there. They're going to find their way back to that traditional conservative person who's going to be running for president. So even if it was what's old boy down who wore the big boots in Florida, DeSantis, right? I think that would be more of a policy conversation with regards to this critical race theory and all that jazz, right?
Well,
As
that could also
opposed
be because
to
he's not a typical politician. You know, like that goes back to what you were saying as far as it being what was the word you used? Not entertaining. What was the word you used, Phil? As far as it being entertaining,
it's
the word
listen,
Performative.
it's 10:51 at night. I have no idea
okay,
what I just said,
performative.
but I wonder because Shannon kept popping in and out, so I want to make sure we get Shannon on the ones and
Mhm.
twos. What's up, Shannon?
What's good,
What are
bro?
your thoughts?
Oh, how you doing? How you doing? I'm glad to be in. I'm glad to be in. But I'm not into politics as far as much. But what I seen today was a tit for
Real
tat.
quick, Shannon,
Can you turn your
is your
radio
radio
down real
on?
quick? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hold on.
All right.
That should be better. All
Yeah,
right.
we can
Yeah.
hear you now.
Yeah, so I'm not into the politics as far as like policies and things. I'm more so of a what did we see over the last 8 years, and what can we go as far as moving forward, as far as I thought my student loans would be gone too, and I had a scholarship, I had a little bit of loans. I'm like, well, it'll just disappear. Nothing happened, But on the other side, as far as me not being as far as too much in the politics, but I do vote. I seen things, even if it was constitutional or not. Trump used to sign things and then it happened, whether we liked it or not, it happened. So it's like, what are we going to see in this next 4 years of what's going to happen if we like it or not, or if we're going to just be told not lies, or if we're going to be sold dreams and then we don't see nothing in the next 4 years again.
But what's crazy about what you said is, and it makes it seem like, and that's something that Trump runs off too. You know, when I said something was going to be put in place, it happened. But you got to remember, when Trump got in office, he had the Senate and the House. You know, so it was extremely, I would say, easier for him to make an impact on getting things signed and pushed through the House and get pushed through the Senate because he had all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Versus when Biden came in office, he literally had to fight for things to even be seen as a possibility, if that makes sense. So yes, Trump can toot his own horn for things actually being done when he was in office, but that's literally because he had the House and the Senate. Like,
Correct. And
right
you're
there.
absolutely right about that. The common American doesn't know that. Just like the common American thinks that we go off of the popular vote and we go off the electoral college vote. And when nobody understands that, I don't understand that. If I make my vote, who is the person that's the electoral college vote? I don't want him voting for me. You know,
And,
like small.
and
I'm
it's
sorry, y'all. Y'all laughing at me, but
no,
Tamara,
no,
no, I'm
no. It's
serious. No.
no.
I'm serious.
That's real. That's real. But that's the whole thing, right? When we talk about how, for folk who are abolitionists like myself, right, who thinks a lot of these things need to be destroyed and reimagined in a different way. When we
Mhm.
talk about politics and we talk about government, one of the first things we've run to prove our point is the electoral college, right? So why is every vote doesn't count in the same way? Because if that was the case, then Hillary Clinton would have been president and not
Mm-hmm.
45, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so these are the things. So it's not to say like, oh, you wow. No, these are the exact talking points that we bring up when it comes to this.
Oh yeah, I
When it
appreciate that.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
And I
When we
wish these
talk about
conversations were
oh, go
actually
ahead.
pulled up today. And no, I was just saying, I don't want to cut you off, Phil, because I know you got something to say, but I wish these conversations or these questions were pulled up today in the debate, when it comes down to the American people being a little bit skeptical about just going up to place a vote, at the polling booth come November because of these electoral college conversations that continue to come up because of what typically happened in 2020. Donald Trump is always going to say he got the election stole from him by the electoral college because of what happened in states like Georgia and Wisconsin. So I definitely think that there's always going to be some type of scrutiny or questioning in that conversation because Hillary is still questioning that situation, like you just brought up, Phil, to this day, as to why she never got her chance is because of the electoral college.
I think
Yeah,
Americans have things simplified.
go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. I
Hold
thank
on
you
one
guys
second,
for this
Shannon. Go ahead, Trey.
platform, but I had a question for everyone. As far as for me, and the question is, why do you still vote? And more so, the lesser of two evils, as we always say. But for me, I vote because our ancestors fought for it. It was a time where we couldn't. It was against the law to read and write. So we have the things in place for us to vote. But within our situations of things of how we have Trump and his agenda and the message, and then Kamala and things of her message of saying how she's not black or what her identity is or what she's going to do for the people that actually looking for votes for. What are we actually, in a sense, when we look at these policies or what we initially look for, what are we actually voting for now?
Right now, I
Who?
think that's a good
Yeah,
question. I think it's
and
opinionated based on everyone's place in life. But go ahead, Trey.
no, I would say if the masses stop voting, like especially our kind, if we stop voting, it would be
What's our con,
hard.
Dre? That's a crazy thing to say.
It
What's our
it it,
con?
it would be hard for us to get that back, for everybody to get back on track to vote. And if we can, if a great deal of us can still hold a place in just voting, we know that we have some type of impact in just the person that we voted for. We have, all right, whatever they say, we got to roll with it because we voted for it. But for the most part, um, we Americans are simplified. We simple, and I think that if you focus more so on the micro aspect of it, which is like your core, your neighborhood, it'll branch out into uh, the larger platforms within government. Like so, like voting, you don't ever want to lose sight of like why we're voting on a presidential scale, but more so just in your area too, making sure that we stay on top of that. So it's a practice that we should maintain versus let go, because if we let go, then it's probably going to be hard for us to get back on track if we ever want to do it again, like be in the spirit to vote.
Appreciation.
So I can appreciate that perspective, right? I think for me, there's I think the first election I might have voted in might have been 2020, right? Like ever. I've never been. That's just not my thing, right? It never was my thing
And how
because
old
I'm
are you,
like,
if you don't mind me asking? It's like, no, I'm fine. So go ahead, do your
no, I'm 40. So
thing.
the first time I voted was 36 because for me, I recognize all the factors
So what
that
year were
come
you
into
18, if you don't mind? I'm just trying to see how many presidents that is in my head.
2001,
Okay.
2002, something like
So
that.
that's the first son. That's those
Since
So
first
Bush,
son.
yeah,
since Bush.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so the idea is, right? And so I still have my thoughts about voting, right? Um, can it be a tool? Sure. As a part of a larger toolkit that might exist. So when we say like if everybody stopped voting,
You
again,
call
my
voting
belief,
a tool and not a right?
well, if it's a right, it's something that can't be taken away from you, right? Ultimately. So me breathing, it's an inalienable right. That's something that's going to happen just physiologically. Anything that can be taken away from you isn't necessarily a right, right? It's a privilege. So when they take away, the right to women to control their body, clearly they're saying, no, this isn't a right. This is a privilege for you to be able to do this. And folk who are making that decision. So for me, I look at it as a tool in the toolbox, right? And so it could be, and it might be the smallest tool in the toolbox, ultimately, because I look at the people as being and more powerful than any vote to happen, right? So if let's say what you said, Dre, right, and everybody just stop voting, my belief is in the people, that the people going to show up and turn out. If Trump gets in the office and he enacts something that's superbly terrible, I would hope that the people will push back. Just like I see thousands of folk have been in the street for the last 10 months or 11 months for Palestinians being killed. I believe the same thing would take place. What we saw during George Floyd, when he was murdered. Now we don't care about police brutality anymore. That's another conversation for another day. But what we saw folk galvanize. I think that's truly how the true change happens, because there's so many factors, there's so many influences that play a part in this voting thing. Is it just happenstance that Kamala has changed her perspective on fracking, on immigration, on healthcare, on what she said was when she talked about these bad actors who are trying to exploit in grocery stores and all of this, to where now it's just like, yeah, I don't know about all of that. We know it's big business behind these. We know it's powerful people behind this that cancel out the vote. Right. And so here we are. We picked these two people. You got the Koch brothers and all of these folk who are pouring in billions of dollars into these folks. Why do you think they got Cori Bush out of her House of Representatives seat, Jamal Bowman out of their House of Representatives seat? Because AIPAC came in and spent millions for other Democrats to say, hey, we rock with Israel. You know what I'm saying? And so ultimately that trumps folks' individual votes. Now, it's not to say don't do it, but it's just to recognize that it's a tool in a small tool, in my perspective.
Tonight has been a name dropping night. Everybody name dropping, even you, Phil. Go ahead, Kay. I would love to hear what you got to say for sure.
And we messed up.
I like it because I wrote it down. I need to know who the Koch brothers is and stuff.
I feel like the infrastructure of this country and how it was founded, as far as its politics, since the advent of America, is it hasn't really changed much to the degree in which we're able to vote. But vote for what? Because the power is not necessarily in numbers when it comes to the African American community, because we only make up 16% of the entire United States. Even though we are the number one consumer that spends the most. But the power is in a lot of these powerful figures. And like what was previously mentioned, we have so many big businesses that are acting as people when it comes to politics. And once corporations and organizations and monopolies became people inside of the whole voting process, that's when I said, oh, this is about to be a machine. And hence the whole process of a new world order. It's not about what the people want. It's not about what's best for the people. It's what's best for the person that is the puppet that is really behind the strings. Do you know what I'm saying? And until we can come to a consensus where we can get back to a time frame like the French Revolution and actually do more than just protesting in the streets, but doing actions to create rippling effects to show our power and create a change in the system. Like, there are some great societies and countries overseas that have stopped sending their children to schools, have affected the whole entire, country in that sense. People have protested by stop going to work, and I'm talking about masses of people, and crashed the economy on purpose and started toiling and farming and bartering again to make their stance to the government that we don't want to play this game with y'all no more unless it's on our terms. And until we get to that point in time, we're not going to have our voices be heard. We're going to continuously, as Black people, did they mention us? Did they mention us? And that's not how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be at the seat at the table. I'm supposed to be here with you. These are my grievances. I have a whole chief of justice coming into my little small town. And guess what? She's meeting with these judges and all these people in the court because they want to expand the court. I see what the issue is. And they're meeting with them to say, oh, how great and a wonderful job you're doing, right? But just about a year ago, ACLU was about to sue them because they weren't transparent on how they were practicing and their judicial practice towards Black and Latino people. So it's like, why would you meet with the judges and the staff, and why would you not meet with the people who are being assisted by these people? So once we can reverse that, that's when we will have systemic change. But the issue is so many people are afraid. There's more, I would say, sheep than there are individuals who can see beyond the lens. So
I have a question real quick for all of you. And I was thinking about this while I was watching this. If you are a poor person, why would you vote for either one of those two people?
Because Kamala's going to give you $25,000 on your first time home.
No. If you're poor, now that's middle class. If you're poor, not necessarily working poor, but if you're poor,
she didn't.
But
say
even with being poor from the environment where we come from, why would I even vote anyway? From the environments where we come from, how we're raised, I wouldn't vote for either one. One on the one side, Kamala, and I say this because she's with Joe. Has anybody ever been to Ukraine? I've never been to Ukraine. I've never been to Ukraine. I know nothing about Ukraine. I don't speak Ukraine. But from my environment, when I see billions of dollars go over there, you got to come meet me outside, bro. I'm over here starving, and you sending $10 billion over there. You know what I'm saying? But then on the other side, on Trump's side, yes, he's good for business. He takes it in. But we saw what happened on January 6th. You think people have the audacity to have that type of racism or that type of confidence to walk up on me like that? If you think you're going to go in office again, you're going to have another type of confidence. And I'm going to have another type of whooping for you. You feel me? So it's like, I think being poor, it is not even about poor. It's about our environment, where we come from. We wasn't raised like this. You know what I'm saying? So I don't even want to vote for him. But our ancestors fought for it, so I'm going to still vote. I'm going to vote for who my mama.
But to that point, because I think you brought up some interesting points there, right? When you brought up the Ukraine point, it reminds me of Muhammad Ali, who said, "I ain't never met no Viet Cong. Like, why am I going? Why am I?"
Yeah,
but in reality,
and you got to think I wasn't even born that time, but it makes
I ain't
sense.
got no beef with them people, right?
I
I
don't
know nothing about them people. But also, when it comes to, in my question, when I posed it about just if I'm somebody of a lower socioeconomic status who's watching this, nobody is speaking to what's happening with me. Everybody is speaking.
She did though, Phil. She didn't necessarily. She didn't. And that's kind of sort of what I feel like Kay was saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kay. But she didn't necessarily point at the people and say, "Hey, Black America, I'm talking to you. Hey, poor Americans, I'm talking to you."
You know why?
Hey, people, talk to me, Dre.
You know, because she think we're all equal. The way she communicates.
Well, she said that.
Looks at us as all equal. Like
I hate people who think that way
on
too.
the same playing field. She looks at us like our lives are like, boom. No, we're like a stock. Like you got some people that's down here, some people that are up here, and some people that's down here sometimes come up. And then you got some people that drop, but she looks at us as all equal.
But she did answer the question today, though. She definitely
that mindset probably came from Howard.
That's part of it too, because they some bougie mob. Even though I'm gonna be down there in like 2 weeks, but this is the anti-blackness of it all, right? Like the same thing that all presidents do, but especially the Black ones, right? Like they're upholding this same tradition. Barack did it. Now when I go speak to the Negroes, I'm gonna use Jeremiah Wright, and I'm gonna be in front of the Black folk, and I'm make it seem like I'm here for y'all. But when I get in front of these folk, and I know white folk are watching, I know I can't speak specifically about Negroes, because then they going to really turn it into this race thing, right? And so she's the same way. When she goes speaks to a room full of AKAs, she's gonna speak to what's happening with Negroes, with the bourgeoisie Negro. When we talk about AKA, shout out to my homegirl Tish who was tuned in. She one of them bourgeoisie AKAs. But ultimately, that's what it is. They can't necessarily speak to. They can only speak to the middle class, right? Because they know, all right, I'm speaking indirectly to poor people because I know you want to be a part of the middle class, and I ain't got to speak to the elites, to the rich, because you got bread, so you don't even worry about what's happening with the middle class. So let me speak to these individuals who, like Shannon said, I know that the middle class are going to vote. That a lot of poor Black and brown folks specifically aren't going to vote, right? Because they don't have the hope in that way,
or the
which is
education behind
completely
the vote.
understandable. Exactly.
But I just want to get this point out, and I'm not
Go ahead. No,
saying
go ahead.
it to or trying to reiterate it to hype Kamala's stance today. I think that she did answer the questions when it came down to what she supposedly has in mind to do with the people, to do for the people, right? She said she was going to give the 6,000 for the
If
child
you have a
care.
baby,
Yeah, the child care, and a lot of women are screaming they need help in child care right now. So she's talking to that predominantly group of people, right? She said she was going to do the $25,000 for the whole first hometown buyer. As Kay mentioned, Black folks are completely behind when it comes to buying homes. When it comes down to breaking the tax cut, she said she was going to cut the tax cut for the rich that you just talked about, Phil, so it can trickle down to that poor person or that poor American. And then she also talked about how education, she plans on doing things with education to actually help educate the person who's in the environment in which Shannon described. So I think that she tidbit, on these conversations and these answers, but at the same time, when you talk about why the poor American or the poor American who's considered the voter, why should they go out and vote? You know what I mean? They want the health care. They want that $25,000. They want these particular home buyer programs, and they want their student loans reversed and things like that. So she mentioned those things today. Donald Trump said nothing about that. Donald Trump said nothing about home buyers. He said nothing about lowering cost. He said nothing about lowering health care. He said nothing about that. All he did was talk about what Joe Biden and Kamala didn't do.
Yeah, and he talked about the fears that folk have, that white folk have. You said Philly Green man, he might not. You said he might be Trump adjacent in some capacity. You know what I mean? But the fears they have, immigrants are getting our jobs, they're getting all these benefits and so forth. Right? He's speaking directly to them people, so they're not even worried about what's happening with us. And this is the thing with poor white people, how they continuously vote against their own interests. Right? Like they're the main ones who are using a public assistance, who's using the Affordable Care Act, but this is where we get this construct of race plays such an important factor in how folk show up in these spaces, man. But ultimately, it's this shit is exhausting.
I
hope they all do.
I'm trying to figure out what is Black people jobs.
He led with that. It was in his first 30 seconds. He opened up with that one. But can we all say our last little remarks? We got let's say, Phil, about 5 minutes left. Let's say our last little remarks before we get off of here.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to start? Phil, you want to start? You want to kick it off?
Oh
no, we'll start with the guests. We start with Shannon. What's your
Yeah.
parting thoughts, Shannon?
I want to say thank you for the opportunity because of not being so knowledgeable on politics. It was very open discussion, and you gave me a chance to speak on my things that I would like to put out into the universe that I think is going on in this America. I don't think that there are establishing things that, that pertain to me, but in the bigger facets, to listen to both sides, I don't think we're getting anywhere. But, with the policies and things like that, I feel like what Dre said, on a micro scale, if we can fix little small systems of like, I'm a law-abiding citizen, and when I get pulled over, I have anxiety and post-traumatic stress because I don't know what's going to happen. Those things in my America has to change before I can worry about what's going on in Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, or anywhere else for a vote to go left or right, or immigration. So thank y'all.
We
Word.
appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
family.
tapping in, bro.
What, Dre?
Yeah, for me, I would have to say that I go back and forth when it comes to voting, because if I don't feel it's right in my heart, I don't think it's right. It's tough the position they put you in, by even having to have these certain conversations. We should be talking about something like not something else. Like on this topic of like presidency and how we want our future to go, but also just the things that we're talking about waste our time because of the foolishness that they are putting out there, the propaganda. Like it's so draining, for real, for real. So I think having these small discussions like this sparks thought in, you know, the conversation that we're going to have with someone tomorrow. And
Because this
hopefully
is gonna
that,
be
you
water
know,
cooler
that
talk for sure.
transgresses us and propels us in the direction that would have more folks in our communities knowing exactly what is going on around like um, politics. It's just not, and it's not that shiny thing that sits up on the mantle that somebody wants to come and touch. It's just not it.
That's a great point.
And until it gets there, we're gonna have to do our own thing. Which, for real, when you think about it, yes, a lot of the things that happen trickle down to us, but a lot of people are living under Uncle Sam's, no, like away from him, out of his shadow, and still making it work within a system that they've created that nobody has or can infiltrate. And being able to do those type of things, and I think it just pass it along to who you feel is worthy enough to carry it on. I think that's the key to our success. So, yeah, that's my little.
You sound like Phil with the abolitionist movement right there.
No, 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 no. He made a
Burn it
great
all
point. Look,
down.
look. Back in my freshman year of college, I was debating with some deltas about this. I didn't know what I was necessarily talking about, but I felt like, yo, the Constitution needs to be rewritten. Like when that shit was written, like where are we today with how people think and how we've grown? Like what? Like that joint was written when nobody, like no black person,
Couldn't even have
what
a say so. Yeah.
man, what, like 3/5, like what, three,
Yeah.
whatever, like
And that was 13 amendments after it was established.
that's sickening to even think about. Textbooks
Yeah.
are rewritten, technology books are rewritten, like business books are rewritten, things are progressing. And I don't think I think those are some of the issues that need to be brought up. So
Appreciate you. Thank you for joining in on the
Word.
conversation
yeah,
today.
that's all
Yeah,
love. I
definitely.
appreciate y'all. No, this was definitely enlightening.
No, definitely appreciate you showing up, fam.
Okay, talk to us.
Okay, you up next.
I know it's 8:18 where I'm at. I know it's late where y'all are
It's
at.
almost
11:18.
11:30.
So let me wrap it up. But no, thank you guys for having this platform. I mean, I just did like a Google search. I was looking for some like-minded individuals. Oftentimes it's very, I don't know if it's because of the locality. I'm in Northern California, but I'm a little bit of ways away from Oakland, and just the mentality of a lot of human beings up in this world is like another other planet. And it's like that same perspective of we're all equal. Anytime you try to celebrate anything black or try to have something that's a black thing, it's like, oh, that's racist. And I'm like, whoa. So it's an interesting thing to have that, and to see this platform do so much with spreading education and talking about the election and our rights is really powerful. I think the number one thing that I took away from this interesting debate for the elections was the fact that it went exactly the way I expected it to go. No real solvencies to the real big issues that are happening and affecting our states. And until our government officials can start to do a little bit more checks and balances with getting the actual voices of the people, instead of these leaders that do not have any ties to the communities that they speak upon, then we're not really going to get anything done. And it just, like my dad used to say, soon people get tired of being sick and tired. And until we get to that point, and when something drastic happens after that, we realize the frog is about to explode from being boiled in the pot for so long. That's when you usually have change, and it's usually hard. It's usually comes with fighting. It comes with war, and a lot of war has been talked from both ends of the conversation. More so on the Trump's end. He's bringing up a lot of discussions about war, even in the debate. And so, sometimes you have to get to that point to have change and to have a reset or some sort of big social change. But either way, I'm ready for it. So,
Yeah, and you're in California, so I can't even imagine, where you all are as far as voters. You know what I mean? Because your state in general, is something that people are always looking at. It's not like our state in Pennsylvania where it was like it's make or break. It's going to be a diehard state, but it's still a state that's always been looked at as far as making sure that it stays Democrat. They want to make sure that it's a blue state for sure, for sure. So,
oh no, California is slowly changing into Republican.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. They want to make it's always being looked at because they want to make sure it stays blue.
Right, right.
So the fact that it's even the possibility of a state like California going red, it's like whoa. That's just a whole like for real a whole nother conversation. When you just think about the typical voter or the everyday voter. But Kay, I appreciate you. You definitely came through with some gems and some nuggets today. So thank you for sure for joining in tonight with us.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
for sure, for sure.
Phil, man, it was an incredible live, incredible stream. Thank you for rocking out with your girl always. I
No
want to drop the
doubt.
mic by just simply saying, one, again, I think it was a good debate because we just needed the conversation. And I'm
Yeah,
someone who
yeah.
honestly doesn't like chitter chatter at all, but I appreciate the chitter chatter tonight because it definitely puts in a lot of retrospects as far as where I'm going, and I'm sure where a lot of other people are going with their vote. Like you said, if you don't know where you're voting by now, it's going to be one of those lesser two evil conversations. Two, as I was watching it and I was just peeping everything about ABC and how they're doing it, it kind of threw in my mind like, yo, this is streaming on Disney Plus right now. When you talk about a monopoly, you talk about the the corporations, and you talk about the money makers. We just watched it on Disney Channel pretty much. I know it's ABC, but we just watched a presidential debate on Disney Channel pretty much. And Disney Channel is supposed to be something that's pushed for youth and kids. And the fact that people were on Disney Plus right now, not to watch Cinderella, but to watch the presidential debate is crazy to me. And that's just something that just popped in my head as we were watching it. And three, I think again, when it comes down to these questions that are being asked, I think we need to have like specific questions. I think the people need to be able to implement some type of questioning into these questions because they were not as straightforward as as I wanted them to be as someone who asks these questions all the time. I think there were so many straightforward questions that could have been asked to 45 and so many straightforward questions that could have been asked towards Harris, just specifically on her policies, her stance and policies that we did not get an answer to because of how wide range some of the questions were. So those are my three thoughts.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I don't even know if I have any thoughts. I didn't go into this having any type of expectation.
Yeah.
I knew that it was going to resort to what it was. It was a back and forth. It was avoiding of answering directly by both participants. I thought I thought Kamala did a better job at handling the questions and speaking to the the American people from a macro perspective, but I thought Trump spoke to his base, which
Yeah.
got him elected the first time. And so whether that's stoking fear or what have you, it wasn't necessarily about, you talk about Kamala and the vibes thing. That's the same thing that happens with Trump. It's more about vibes. And the vibe here is fear. And he spoke about that, why other leaders are around the world, how they fear him, right?
Mhm.
And this fear is is the same fear that well, it's not the same fear, but it's experienced by his base. When we talk about immigration, we're talking about getting too woke as a country. It's just rooted in this inherent fear. I think that we have now entered a place, and I alluded to it earlier, where every election going forward is going to be about one, the candidates having previously aligned themselves with Trump. Right. That's going. So in the next 4 years, they're going to say, well, you were with Trump. He's going to be a talking point going forward until this generation goes through.
Or at least
Right.
he actually takes a day in jail. Like if they actually send this man to jail.
Yeah, but even like the Democrats, and that's what I'm speaking to specifically, like the Democrats, they're going to use Trump as a talking piece when to castigate future Republicans going forward. And
People
so
don't
it's
even want to
always,
say his name. You think that's true? Like people don't even
yeah,
want to say the word Trump.
but it's going to be used as a tactic.
Hmm.
If anything else, right? It's just in 4 years, let's say it is Ron DeSantis. Oh, you were aligned with Trump. And that's going to be like the stain that's going to be put on people's late. And that's going to be a strategy that's used. There's every election going forward is they're going to bill as the most important election in history, which in essence it is, because it's the one that's happening right then. But they're going to continue to bill it as being the end of democracy, I think, going forward. Every election, it's going to be life or death. That's how it's going to be promoted. But when we talk about just tangible things, that I learned anything new? No. I was hoping to learn something about Kamala's platform and the myriad of issues
I
that
wanted to know
she
what she
has
was going to do with
posted.
black folks.
Yeah, and
I wanted to just hear her say it to my people, for my people. Like I just wanted it to come off. You feel me? Like she had Al Sharpton, she had, every black House representative speaking up and moving this week, getting us prepared for this debate, and she did not
It ain't
show
no
up.
FUBU
You know what I
effect,
mean?
man.
Like
It
it
ain't
wasn't
no
it
FUBU
was no
effect.
fist up in the air type effect either.
Not
Was
at
not
all.
one moment what I felt like I should throw my fist up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was like a really blower for me. And I want to make this last point before we let each other go. And again, Phil, I appreciate you for making this
Oh
happen
yeah, no
for us
doubt.
both tonight. It was mentioned, but it wasn't talked about. And I think that this was something that should have definitely been talked about in this first debate, which is the 2025 plan. You know what I mean? Kamala mentioned it. She called it his plan. She called it his, agenda. But the question was not asked. And I think with so much conspiracy, so many different rhetoric, so many different false narratives, fake news, quote unquote, we can't believe the media, we can't believe what we see on Google and things like that. That 2025 agenda should have been brought up in the public eye, in the space where every American was watching. I can't wait to Google and see how many viewers were actually viewing at one time. But when you think about the fact that something like that has not been brought up, and it's something that's been talked about over these past 9
Exactly.
months.
It's been a tactic that's been used, but it was just glossed over. Like they
Exactly.
mentioned it. He said, "Yo, that ain't
She
me."
mentioned it.
And
None
they,
of the moderators
yeah,
mentioned it. He didn't mention it. She mentioned it, and he just defended himself by simply saying, "That's not my plan. That's not my agenda," and moved on. If that
and
makes
kept
sense.
pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wish
Yeah.
that was actually something that was talked about, or at least addressed or asked, to see what they were going to say about it, because I wanted to even know what her thoughts about it. You know what I mean? All she did was pointed in his direction, but she didn't give any like insight or background as to how she.
Yeah, it was used as a tool to slander him, as
Yeah.
opposed to offer any real detail behind it. Ultimately, what I recommend everybody to do is continue to protect your peace. Right, protect your peace, protect your energy. Be mindful of what you're taking in, because it's about to get ratcheted up a notch after this debate. We're 50 some odd days away from the election, so it's been a little quiet recently, right? And so now it has. Now it's just going to be on socials. We're going to get back to the arguing, the fighting, the
We're gonna get
unfriending, and
tons of
all of that.
memes. I think we're gonna get
Exactly.
tons of memes out of it for sure.
Exactly.
Because Trump dropped some bombs. Kamala tried her best, but Trump definitely dropped some bombs. And after you made it, you know, a reference, and I understood what he was saying about the fact that she really did get 0 votes that first time around when she was running, when she actually ran for president. You know what I mean? She really did get 0 votes compared to the guy who she's working with now. And he continued to make sure that everyone knew that that was her boss. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think we're
Yeah.
going to get some type of social media reaction from this for sure. But Phil, I thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for rocking with me. For
No
those
doubt.
who
How
tuning
can the
in,
people reach out to you?
just about to hit that one. At revive_POC, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. Website is reviveisalive.com. And hopefully we'll be back on the 1st for the vice president debate. We back? We rocking back out?
Oh, they debating too?
On October 1st, yeah.
Listen, I think I need a drink to handle that. I haven't had a drink in 4 years, but I feel like I'm gonna need a drink to navigate that. I think that might be, honestly, I think that might be where you get, it's a little bit more civil. You'll get a little bit more policy discussion, even
Because
though
these are
JD Vance is
politicians,
like
yeah.
a wackadoo. You know, I think he's going to try hard to keep it together.
Because Watts is
You know,
coming. Watts is going to come for him.
he's coming, but also think about this. JD Vance is green in politics, right? And so he's trying to create a name for himself. So yeah, he attached himself to Trump, but I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to make a name for JD Vance, right? Because once Trump is gone, if they lose and he's gone, he's going to still be there, and he might try to position himself as the future of the party, right? So I think he's going to try it and be on his best behavior. Again, he a little wacky, so I don't know how, talk about cats and all of this. I don't know how well he's going to do with that. But yeah, we going to pull back up for on the 1st. I think
1st
it'll
of
be a lot
October.
milder. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot milder going forward. As always, you can catch me on social medias at Phil_Roundtree. Hit to the YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop some comments. If you're watching the replay of this, I'm trying to stall because we're 2 seconds away from 3 hours. We just hit the 3-hour mark. So listen, until next time, peace.
Peace, man. I appreciate